Yeah.
What? But Maliki said basically they haven't given us a traffic study or really anything substantial since the last time. So
No, that's fine.
we haven't anything really.
Okay.
Expect to run away.
No.
I'll look at this later.
Yeah, I know. I'll read it tonight before bed.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. Welcome to the December 15th meeting of ANC 3F. I'm Adam Tope, chair of ANC 3F. I guess let's quickly introduce ourselves.
Mary Beth Ray, 3F3.
Sally Gresham, 3F04.
Shirley Adelstein, 3F2.
Hatchikopchik, 307.
All right, so first up, I circulated the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions?
Yes, I'd like to add that we talk about the donation of Forest Hills home. We're holding our meetings here at the end of the meeting.
We don't make donations with this one.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? Okay, so I'll make a motion to approve the agendas, or second?
Second.
All in favor?
Could you use your mics? We can't hear
That's
you.
So the mics go online, so we just use our vocal voices.
Well, we can't hear you.
I'll try to speak up or come up to the front. So first up is announcements. If you have something to talk about that's not on the agenda, you may come up to this microphone here and speak about whatever you wish.
Good evening, Commissioners. David Bardeen. I live on 4701 Connecticut. You have on your agenda some discussion of the Chick-fil-A application. I'm not going to go into that. But in reading the drawings and the work that the architects and the engineers did for that project, it raises a very interesting issue, much more generically for our neighborhood, which I want to call to everybody's attention now for something to be looked into next year. We've been concerned about stormwater for a long time. City's been concerned. And the stormwater rushing from Connecticut Avenue down into Soapstone Valley has been identified as the source of that terrible erosion there. The parts of Soapstone Valley eroded all the way down to bedrock. And although it's conceivable that some of the problem is the way the sanitary sewers were laid, maybe what Long laid it may not have done as good a job of covering as they could. Everybody knows that it's that rush of stormwater. Now the plan since at least 2011 that the Office of Planning came up for us was that we would gradually develop on the wide sidewalks of Connecticut Avenue what we call bioretention basins, or facilities where we break up some sidewalk, we put in porous earth, plant plants, and arrange it so rainwater soaks into there instead of rushing down into the park. Well, it turns out, according to these architects and engineers' plans, that they say, and they may well be right, I'm talking with Ryan Hand, the Ward 3 Office of Planning planner for our ward, there's a problem here. They say there isn't any storm sewer on that block. And when we look at the maps, we see most of the stretch of Connecticut Avenue, all the way up here, all the way down to Tilden, there are very few storm sewers. And they're saying that before you can put in bioretention, the city might require, before the city puts it in, before a private developer puts it in, the city might require that in case of a very heavy rain, there be what they call an underdrain, a drainage system that would take the extra water and put it into a storm sewer. But of course, if there isn't any storm sewer, you can't do that. So it's going to raise a question that we might want to consider as a community, as a neighborhood, you commissioners, as an ANC, city, various city agencies, whether we really need storm sewers as part of our long-term project, on the stretches of Connecticut which don't have any storm sewers. I just wanted to call that to your attention, not for something on this agenda, but something to look into next year. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next.
Good evening, commissioners and residents. My name is Judy Jones. I'm an ANC commissioner myself. I'm from 4B, specifically 4B07. I'm here to talk to you tonight about the Pepco Exelon merger. I know it's not on your agenda, but I hope that you will come up with a resolution tonight. It is critical. The Public Service Commission is not going to take will take comments until December 23rd. So time is of the essence. Exelon recently handed in a non-unanimous settlement agreement to the Public Service Commission. It was announced by the Executive Office of the Mayor and the Mayor herself. But there are some issues that I think that you need to take a look at. And we hope that you will support the opposing the new settlement agreement for these reasons. The ratepayers really only get a $100 tip rather than $50 tip in the new settlement agreement. We will lose local control of Pepco to Chicago-based. They are planning, Exelon said they would open an office here in DC and have some executives here, but that's only to talk to the city council and the mayor's office. The Exelon merger and Pepco merger will monopolize the distribution channel. They go from creating the energy to distributing it on the market. Pepco can negotiate those terms, but if Exelon is the only supplier that they will be willing to talk to, I think we will lose that ability to negotiate on the open market. There are continued obstacles in the agreement to continuing the sustainability program, very much underway in Washington and to the residents. So I'm hoping that you'll take a look at that. It is very minimal. The agreement doesn't recognize the the solar power or the DC Sun or these solar power companies that are in DC already and operating. Please take a look at the Pepco and Exelon financial positions. Pepco's shares are higher than Exelon shares on the open market. So who should be taking over whom? They are in a better financial position at the moment and do not have to really extend. I don't know why they're extending a hand to Exelon at all. Again, we'll lose local control. Also, there is the Public Service Commission is required under the Retail Electric Competition and Consumer Protection Act of 1999 not to approve any merger that will allow a monopolistic rate increase, that will not allow them to go on the open market and negotiate any negotiate with other companies other than Exelon. We need to make Pepco a truly public utility. If Exelon, in its financial position, can make an offer to DC, we as taxpayers and ratepayers should be able to make a counter offer to DC, to Pepco, to make it truly public. I hope you'll devise the resolution tonight. Those are some of the things that I wanted to present to you in the time allotted. Also, if you need language, I would be glad to help you input that. And so again, I hope that you will write a resolution and to oppose it. I have some language here that Mr. Robinson gave me for some other commissions, but he devised it for your commission tonight. So
We've already done that.
you've already done the new settlement agreement.
What is the date of the new one?
Previous?
The new settlement agreement came in August, right after the
Yes.
Public Service Commission.
Yes, we've done that, and we also, Andrea Malott spoke at the hearing.
on your behalf?
Yes.
Then I'm sorry I wasted your time.
Yep.
Did you oppose it? Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I'm glad to meet you. I'm glad to
Nice to
meet
meet
you.
you.
Sally,
Thanks for
are
being
you
here.
sure? Hey, Sally, are you sure?
Yeah,
Because
we did one like in,
and there's a revised.
yeah, since
Settle.
August, yeah, we did it.
No, there was been one since then.
She said it was revised.
It was rejected after. There's a
Is there
new-
any other announcements?
We're gonna do it again.
Huh?
Okay, so next we'll do commissioner announcements. So
There's a different agreement.
There are 5 brief announcements from ANC 3F3. First of all, Van Ness Main Streets has changed its name from Van Ness Main Streets, Inc. to Van Ness Group, Inc., doing business as Van Ness Main Street. It's really just a technicality to keep the Department of Small and Local Business Development happy. Second announcement, Van Ness Main Street is beginning our interviews of executive directors tomorrow. So this is a really exciting opportunity for our Van Ness corridor. We've won a grant for $200,000. We get to hire an executive director, and we had 22 terrific applicants. We've narrowed those 22 down to 7, and we hope to narrow it down further to 3 and hire somebody at the beginning of the year. The third announcement, I don't know how many people in the audience drive past 3010 Albemarle Street. I drive past it about 10 times a day. There were bollards blocking the driveway because the owner had built an illegal driveway. And it has been in litigation with the Department of Transportation. I learned from Matt Marcoux the other day that it has now gone to mediation. The bollards are removed, and hopefully they'll be able to work something out in mediation. If they don't, it'll go back to litigation. So they're hoping to persuade the owner to put in pervious pavement as part of a possible solution. The fourth announcement relates to a property right across the street from that, 3100 Albemarle, the former Polish ambassador's residence. I learned today that a contract is pending on that property. The purchaser is Julio Murillo with MMG, who built the 3 houses at the intersection of Albemarle and 36th Street. They're considering subdividing the property into 4 or 5 lots, and they want to meet with the neighbors to get our input. So I expressed our concern for the mature trees on that property. It's unclear to me whether the tree and slope overlay of Forest Hills applies to part of that property. I don't think it applies to all of it. They have had a legal opinion done by Holland and Knight that they're going to send to us. I've also expressed concern about stormwater management issues because that's part of the path that water takes from Brandywine down into Soapstone Valley that David Bardeen was talking about. So anyway, hopefully we'll have a community meeting to talk about their plans in January. And the fifth announcement is really just, I'd like to commend former Commissioner David Bardeen. Is David still here? Yes, there he is. David, I just want to thank you for the time and love and dedication that you put into everything related to our ANC and to uncover this nugget of our not having storm sewers is absolutely phenomenal. It's a great discovery. It's terrible news, but it's a great discovery because when we talk about implementing bioretention in our neighborhood to hold the storm water and stop erosion and protect our beloved Soapstone Valley Park, we can't do that if we don't have storm sewers. So thank you, David.
You're here to that, David. I have 4 announcements. The Park Van Ness retail space update. Exciting news was announced last week by BF Saul Real Estate. The VF Sol is in the back of the room. They'll be up here in a minute. A new restaurant and a high-end market are moving into Park Van Ness. Welcome, Sophia. Solina, another restaurant by the husband and wife team of
Fabio.
Favio and Favio Mayor.
Oh, Filamare.
Filimare. They're downtown, and they're also at Georgetown at Washington Harbor. And then Soapstone Market, which will be a prepared food and deli, and it's the same owners that have Broad Branch Market. So welcome. That's going to be great. The Park Van Ness construction project, since the team is here tonight, I'm not going to give any update on that. They'll discuss the construction activities for December and January when they present the sidewalk opening timeline for us. The current traffic control plan is in effect until December 19th. And again, Saul, Clark, and DDOT representatives will discuss the next traffic control plan during their presentation. An update on WMATA Van Ness Metro Station, the stairs. On Monday, Ann Chisholm and Cedric Watson, who have been here several times to our ANC, reported to the ANC that the projected date of the reclosing of the west stair will be in late February or early March. Ann and Cedric will be at our January 19th meeting to present their quarterly report. The Murch Elementary School modernization continues on. This Thursday, December 17th at 6 p.m. in the Murch Auditorium, there will be a community meeting to discuss the swing space scenarios. DCPS and DGS will present 4 possible sites under consideration at this time. The sites are on-site at Murch, Lafayette current swing space, split on-site at Murch and the Capitol Memorial Church, Forest Hills Park, and the UDC soccer field with a trailer park-like campus. There is a lot of debate going on about the swing space. It will affect our neighborhood greatly wherever they are because of the construction and because of 600 and some kids being displaced. All are welcome to attend, so please do so you can find out about where they might be going. Here's the flyer out front.
Good evening, everyone. My first announcement is for residents of ANC 3F2. I'd like to let you know that our next community meeting will be January 28th at 7:30 p.m. at Van Ness East. That information will be posted on my website, shirleyadelstein.com, tomorrow. So if you need a reminder, that will be there, and that meeting is open to all residents of 3F2. I'd also like to congratulate UDC on getting their clock tower up and running. Some of you might have noticed that on your way over here. They are on track to open the Student Center, as I understand it, on January 20th, and I know we're all really looking forward to that. Finally, the topic of stormwater mitigation has come up. I know several folks in my district are very interested in this issue, particularly since some of our buildings abut soapstone. So I just wanted to let folks who are interested in that know that the Soapstone Melvin Hazing Committee is going to be doing some work to look at opportunities to improve stormwater mitigation in our area. And so if any of you, particularly those who live in nearby the park, but certainly anyone in 3F, if you're interested in looking at that and working on that, please let me know. We do welcome involvement of community members on these issues. That's it for me.
Alrighty, next up is our police report. So, Lieutenant Durand, how are you?
Good. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. I was told to keep it brief, so I just want to say everything's good. Have a good night. See you later.
No.
A couple of quick issues I want to hit on real quick. Some of the major things, I could step here and count you out numbers, and actually in the PSA hole of 203, we are down for the year. It's 10%. It's nothing to write home about. Crimes the things that are driving crime in this neighborhood, other neighborhoods in the PSA itself, theft from autos. Continue to get killed at theft from autos. A lot of it are off of the Connecticut Avenue area. Some are back in the neighborhoods. Theft from office. Theft.
Theft.
Sorry, I was born in New York State Public School Education. Yes, that's basically people breaking into cars. To be honest with you, that's something that really, it's a crime that's perpetuated a little bit by the victim. Consistently, you go down and see what was stolen. I left my purse in the car. I wasn't thinking about it. I left my GPS in the window. My cell phone was charging. I didn't think to take it. My ashtray was filled where I threw the quarters every time that I went in. Somebody comes by, these guys will move quick and they're gone very fast. When I say, really just to put it in perspective, it's usually not 20 guys, it's usually one guy that hits 20 cars. So a lot of times when we do catch somebody, it'll die off for a while, they'll either get out or somebody else will come up and take their place. Package thefts. People are continually, I know it's hard, you tell them, please have somebody sign for it, don't leave it out front. This time of year, people are having packages stolen off their property. Phone scams, we've had a few of those. If anybody's calling you saying, meet me at Forest Hills Park because I got $2 million that I need you to put in your account, it's probably not a good idea. Again, if anything, what they used to say, anything sounds too good to be true, it's probably not. Be very careful with your personal information. Identity theft is also a reported crime around here. Major violent crime we had an armed robbery of the Exxon on Connecticut Avenue, 3700 block. Individual came in, ordered a bottle of water, produced a gun and said, give me the money. That case is actually a federal case now because they like that for this guy's going interstate to do this a couple different places. So we're having help from the FBI trying to close that. Forest Hills Park, I just want to take a minute to say, if you guys don't appreciate Sally, you should. Because when it's come to dealing with this Cameron guy in the park, I've spoken to him. I can assure you he's harmless. He's a nuisance, but he's harmless. All right? If you have any more issues with him, email me. All right? My name is Kathy.Lanier. No. it's Gary, Gary. Durand, Durand, @dc.gov. We've been working with the General Counsel for Department of Parks and Recs. There are some things we can do. Hoping it didn't have to get to it, but my officers now have been instructed if they get a noise complaint for him, they're to take a report. If we get enough of these reports, the General Counsel for Parks and Recs will move to have him barred from the park. Okay? I'm trying to think, does anybody have anything I'm missing? Any questions? I guess I know you got a full agenda tonight. Yes.
Thank you for coming, and I have been hearing a lot of complaints about the auto break-ins, and my message to everybody has just been, don't leave it in the car and lock your car.
It's a shame to say that, but it really is. It stings, and it happened to me. And I thought, I left my departmental cell phone right on my dashboard, wasn't even thinking about it, came back, it was gone. I don't personally lock my car because I'd rather, if they're going to break into it, just go in and don't break my window, but.
Was that out of a police car?
No, it was out of my PO.
Oh, that's pretty cheeky if they took it out of
Well, actually, what they're doing in Chevy Chase is they're telling people to leave their consoles open and their glove boxes open so that people see that there's nothing in it. And we can be in Richmond, Virginia. We used to leave our car unlocked so people wouldn't break the window.
My car got broken into in Southern Maryland, parked in my driveway.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter. When I was younger, I lived in the city on Lanier. My ex-wife, 3 times they cut her top just to get into the car and steal nothing. It just doesn't matter. It can happen to you anywhere, wherever you are. You might think you're in the safest place in D.C. It's a crime of opportunity. If somebody sees it, they're going to take advantage of it.
I actually had another question
Sure.
I wanted to ask you. We've had
2-question limit.
Okay, I'll stop after 2. We've had a number of complaints about speeding traffic on Brandywine Street.
Right.
And I've asked the neighbors to meet and reach consensus on what they want, But the common theme has been that they really want enforcement cameras, speed cameras. How would we proceed with that?
Right now, a gentleman, and his name escapes me, from the neighborhood, I mean, he had a bad day. He must have been almost hit by a car like 4 times in one day from his email. We are working with DDOT, and with the traffic cameras, DDOT has to do a study and determine where they're going to put them. That's not something that falls. When you get the ticket, it might say Metropolitan Police Department on it, but it's not us that puts it in there. During the day, some of you probably see Steve Franchek out in the neighborhood a lot,
Yep.
pulling people over. He's been doing a lot of enforcement in the morning. Some other issue I guess we talked about were trucks on Reno Road. We'll try to get some enforcement out on that. And a lot of it is signage that's already there, and people are just ignoring the signs. So.
But we had heard that it was possible for the neighbors to supplement the cost of a speed camera.
That I really tell you the truth, I don't know. We should have seen the FADS machine up around your area where it tells people how fast
Yeah,
they're going.
are they gonna
Yeah.
put one on Brandywine?
What
'Cause
we have is
actually
we have
asked-
one assigned to our district, and we move it around.
So can you put that next? Because right now it's
Yeah, I
on
can.
Fessenden.
I can ask.
Okay,
Okay.
that'd be
And
great.
there's I hate
Right
to say
at the
8 other
curb.
PSAs that are all, but right now I haven't heard a lot of, because everything goes to the same listserv, we see everybody else's stuff. So I haven't heard a lot of traffic complaints, so that's very possible. I'll talk to Franchek about seeing if he can get the VMO to relocate it.
And what do you call the machine?
It's called a FADS machine, don't ask me what the acronym
Okay.
is for.
Fast. Put it in
it-
front of Jim Burris.
But actually, it does do a good thing. It's not an enforcement mechanism, it doesn't take a picture of you.
Right.
Right.
But a lot of times we get going, we're busy, we're not really paying attention, and the thing tells you like, hey, you're doing 35. Well, you're only supposed to be doing 25. Or you might be doing 35 and get ready to hit speed bump that's in the neighborhood that's gonna, do some damage. I saw a hand from a young lady back there. Did she still have a question? Yes.
Oh, yeah, it's just a quick question. I heard something, talking about crime. I heard that in Chinleytown and a little bit more in the northern part, there have been reports about this small gang of people that are called Wolf Pack or something. And there's a
There-
bunch of young people that just
There was some attempt robbery that happened up there that involved a couple of juveniles. They didn't actually commit a crime. Some things happened in Georgetown. If it's, and I hate to do the corporate line, if it's something that we will get it out to you if it's something that we think a neighborhood is in danger. All right, but there have been some sporadic incidents of some young individuals committing some crimes. But it's not, it's not as it's not as money as I think some people like to believe. Did that answer your question, ma'am? Oh,
Well, yeah, it's because 2 people have told me, and they have even said that they call themselves Wolf Pack
Right.
or something like that. And these are, little.
no, I understand. It's groups of juveniles. Most of their stuff has been centered in Georgia.
Great.
Hey, listen,
Thank you.
man, everybody have a happy, safe holiday, and I'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I guess is anyone from Pierce Mill here? Yeah, okay, we'll do that later. So next, we'll do a quick presentation from DDOT and Park Van Ness regarding the sidewalk. So if you'd like to come on up. Matt's is coming.
He said he was coming, but he'd be late.
You can stand in front of our microphone. That doesn't amplify.
It doesn't. Did you?
There's another stand.
There's a stand.
We can use that.
We can
You
use
just
that.
put it in
Yeah.
front of it.
Well, hi, my name is Don Hashey. I'm with the Saul Centers Company, and tonight we have Richard Houghton, who's holding the board. Jason Elliott with Clark Construction and Matt Powers with Clark Construction. Richard and I work together with Saul, and we're the project management team for the Park Van Ness project, 4455 Connecticut Avenue. Can everybody hear me okay? Because I'm getting an echo on my end. You can't hear me back there? How about now? I think they said it wasn't working very well.
It's just for our online
Do you
audience.
want?
Oh, I
there's
see.
a
Okay.
Mic right here.
I'll try to raise my...
Don,
Yes?
there's a mic right there, if you want to use it.
Does that work any better? I'm not going to sing any
Cut
songs tonight.
on.
Anyways, I just want to first of all say thank you all for allowing us to come out tonight so we can provide you an update with the Park Van Ness project and a status of where we're at with the opening or reopening of the Connecticut Avenue sidewalk on the east side. As for the project, I just want to tell everybody that we are several months behind schedule. We've encountered numerous project delays, and I'll get into some of those that are specific to the project, which obviously is delaying us from opening the sidewalk. I'll just yell. That's okay. I can talk as long as you can hear me. Oh, much better. You got to turn the button on, I guess. So, anyways, with regards to the project, you know, our original scheduled completion date was in December, end of December of this year, and then we would open up sometime in January. We're looking at actually opening the project now in April of this year. And some of the reasons that we had our setbacks, you know, and some of which are in our control, some of which are not in our control. One of the items that we do have control of, and that is putting together the original project schedule. The project is very, very complicated. I'm sure for you that live in the area, you know, we've been neighbors for over 40-some years now. It is a very difficult site, has a lot of drop-off from Connecticut Avenue. And the Saul Company, we have a tendency of designing things that are a little difficult and complicated, but they look magnificent, and I hope you all feel that way, that it's going to be a nice addition to the community. So we take responsibility for that, and we underestimated the amount of time, energy, and resources that were necessary, so we've fallen behind schedule being able to finish the project. You know, there's concrete and masonry work in place, as well as the site work. Weather obviously plays an important role in these projects, and unfortunately we've encountered close to 60 days of weather. We build time into our schedule, but in this particular case we had some pretty torrential downpours. We had a very cold winter last year. This June we had, you know, one day where I think the entire month we had 9 or 10 inches of rain, which obviously put a damper on us being able to finish certain phases of the work. So weather does play into it. One of the key elements to any large project is having the permanent power turned on. Our schedule had the power being turned on in July of this year by our schedule. Unfortunately, it didn't happen until October. Various reasons. There's a lot more complexity when you're digging in the street that has, you know, water, sewer, storm, gas, telephone. I'm sure I left off a few other utilities that are in the way, having to work around those. You know, and some of those items had to be, you know, readjusted that we did not anticipate. Unfortunately, our power didn't get turned on until, Jason, I believe it was October, end of October. November 4th. You can see that was much later than we anticipated. The net result of that is that we still have to build a project, and we just didn't stop because the power wasn't turned on. We have elevator hoists. We had 3 of them on the building that basically bring material into the building. They all operate from the outside of the building. If that power was turned on sooner, and as a matter of fact, within weeks when the power was turned on, we started removing those lifts. We started removing some hoists, and we used our internal elevator system. So again, the power delay affected the job. And probably the most critical one recently, and we started actually digging and excavating in the public right-of-way, and that is that we ran into Pepco had a couple of existing underground duct banks and a series of manholes that are actually within the public right-of-way. We knew about those duct banks, we knew about the manholes, and we planned to adjust 2 of the manholes actually. It was part of our plan. Unfortunately, when we uncovered them, the duct banks were basically deteriorated. They were falling apart. There were live cables basically hanging out of the ducts. The manholes, 2 of them completely were deteriorated and collapsed once we removed basically the soil that was around it. And unfortunately, we had to stop the job in that particular area, which affected the northern half of our site. We met with Pepco representatives initially, and they pretty much told. And this was in about late October. When we were excavating on site, and they told us that for them to proceed with the repairs, they would have to engineer it, it would have to go into design, it would have to go into construction pricing, then it goes into construction, then it gets rebuilt. We're talking 4 to 6 months, and that was a very conservative time frame. We chose not to do that. We chose to beg and plead and grovel and agree to rebuild it at our cost and our expense as long as we could expedite it with the same contractors that work for Pepco. And we did that, and it took us 2 months, not 4 or 6 months. So I just want to share that with you. And again, it is our expense. So again, that was another item that basically has put a little setback into the project. So I want to share those with you because I feel it's important to be open and forthright here. The other thing we want to talk about is the sidewalk reopening. Our plan right now, we've rescheduled and resequenced the activities that are necessary to complete the public works improvements. And right now we are targeting, and we've committed to a date to Mr. Matthew Marcoux has just arrived here, to Mr. Marcoux, that we will put the appropriate resources into this to complete that by February 26th. And that's the date that we're looking at right now. Sally, you wanted me to talk about a couple of other items. That was the December updates. Would you like me to talk about those?
Just briefly.
December and January updates.
Yes.
We will be continuing, and we anticipate having all the masonry work on the building complete and the exterior facade complete. So all lifts, all masonry crews will be off-site. We will have continue working on the site work. That is in the back of the building. We're actually landscaping right now. We're putting the final pavers down, and that is adjacent to the National Park Services as well as within our private courtyards. That'll continue and be finished. I'm going to say that's going to be probably by the end of January timeframe at the back of the building. And then the last major push will be the hardscapes along Connecticut Avenue. That will continue as well. That's pretty much our update that we have for the project and where we stand with the reopening of the sidewalk. And Richard Houghton has a plan there that he's going to hold while Jason kind of walks you through. Basically, you've seen this plan before. I believe it's been presented to you. Which shows the sidewalk that we're planning to open and the depths. So, Jason, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Good evening, everyone. So the plan on February 26th, as Don alluded to, the opening date for the project is sometime in April. So for the last month to two of the project, the plan is to get the outside basically 10 feet. 6 feet of sidewalk open so that there is a walking surface adjacent to Connecticut Avenue. We will have a temporary fence installed that will separate the still active construction area, which is basically the hardscape between the open sidewalk and the face of the building. And the sidewalk will be in its permanent state, so the pavers will be in, the handicap ramps will be in. There will be a small section directly across from Yuma Street that will remain in a temporary condition to allow for construction personnel, vehicles, and materials to pass from Connecticut Avenue to get back in to finish the pavers kind of internal to the site. And that will, as Don said, continue in through April. Sure. There will be some intermittent stops, short stops as we are moving material from the street into the site. At which time we'll have flaggers. The subcontractors who are offloading those deliveries will have flaggers on site to let everyone know that it's not safe to pass, just so the material is received from Connecticut Avenue and delivered inside the site. So there will be, for those last couple weeks, there will be some short stoppages as we're unloading trucks, delivering, taking material out.
Jason, will you explain when the blue area is removed and the permanent infrastructure goes in place?
Sure.
How you'll be running people around?
So when we are ready to take the area in blue here, which is kind of the delivery area, when we're ready to take that from its temporary to final condition, the pedestrians will then be able to be routed in towards the building and back into the sidewalk as this area will then be complete. So once this area is complete and available to walk, we will then kind of flip the pedestrians in towards the job site at the entrance, and then we will take this blue area to completion.
Will you have fences around that area?
We will. There'll be a temporary fence similar to what you see now, and we'll have that area that separates the construction area from the area that's open to the pedestrians.
Matt, do you have anything you want to add?
I'm Matthew Marcoux with the District Department of Transportation. I appreciate the opportunity to come here with Saul Centers and Clark Construction and with the ANC to update the neighborhood. Nobody is happy about this continued circumstance. To be specific, it costs them thousands. I didn't actually do the actual calculation, but this will cost them for permit fees, thousands of dollars, possibly tens of thousands of dollars this extra 2 months. So it's not something that has no cost to them. So this is not something that anybody is taking lightly. Everybody's moving as expeditiously as possible. It's unfortunate that there was infrastructure that was unknown at the time, and that traditional construction delays can't have occurred. It's just a challenge that we all have to face. And we have been in touch with WMATA about the about the escalator work on the east side, and they are currently projecting end of February, beginning of March for the closure of the east side. So hopefully they will coincide, and that the west sidewalk will be open before the east entrance closes again. Okay.
And do you want to talk about the traffic control plan, which I announced a new one will be December 19th?
So the way traffic control works is that it adjusts during phases of construction. And so as they're moving in toward the next phases of construction, as they were mentioning, the material will be transitioning from the facade work, and they'll be moving more toward the site work and the streetscape. As they transition to that, different traffic control plans will be utilized. They'll be minorly different, but they will have an impact. In the end, the sidewalk will still be closed. But once the sidewalk is open, the sidewalk will be open. There will be intermittent closures. Those will be momentary. By intermittent and momentary, which are not defined terms, I would describe them in the period of minutes rather than the period of hours, okay? And that's an important part of this, because until that happens, until this opens, any temporary opening would require a potential closure for an hour, and that's simply unsafe. And that's ultimately why this plan, which was the original plan that we had discussed years ago about having the sidewalk work start at the curb and come in, what is the plan that we're going to continue with, and ultimately just it's delayed by about 2 months.
Thank you.
Very well.
Thank you all for sharing that with us and for your cooperation. How will this be communicated to the merchants in the area? I know a number of the, Leo the barber and some of the places on both east and west sides of the street have expressed concern. So I just wanted to find out if you all have a plan to communicate with them.
The Italian Pizza Kitchen is one.
Montessori
iPad,
school.
the school,
across the
and the
street.
dry cleaner. The dry cleaner's on the corner, so they're not affected as much. But the others have come to us and voiced concern that, granted, it's in the winter, so it's not as much traffic, but.
Well, in the past, most notifications have gone through the ANC. We'd be more than happy to meet with the individual proprietors that are on our side, on our side of the street, the east side that is, and meet with them individually, hand flyers out, talk to them. And we do patronize most of those. And
Right.
Very good relationship with the Montessori school.
I mean,
as
if
well.
you could just let them know,
Absolutely.
I think that would be important.
Sure.
That's a very important point. Exactly right. That because they are as impacted as anybody else.
Does anyone else have questions?
So, thank you for your
Thank you.
coming
for your time.
tonight.
So next up, we'll do a update from Sidwell. So Sidwell was here 2 meetings ago to talk about they're moving the lower school to where the Washington Home is. And then last week they had a community meeting, which primarily talked about traffic plans. And they're here tonight to talk again, and turn over to you.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having us again. I'm Brian Garment, head of school, and thanks to everyone for coming. Thank you also to the neighbors who came to our town hall meeting last week. We've been thinking about that meeting, and you'll see some of that conversation reflected in some altered traffic plans when Jamie Milanovich, our traffic consultant, goes through that. Also, one.
The mic is working. Could you
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's on.
It's on? There? Okay, good. Yes, sorry about that. But I was saying that we have had, from our meeting last week, you'll see some of the discussion reflected in a change in our traffic plan. Also, one of the things we heard loud and clear last week was to look into the possibility of busing, which we will do. Someone asked us to consider the busing only option, and so we will start to conduct research on that at the beginning of the year to see about the feasibility of that project. So again, we hope to learn more tonight and welcome your questions. The conversations have been helpful in the past, and I suspect that they will remain so tonight. So I'll turn it over to Susie, and then Jamie will take you through the traffic piece. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Susan Rodriguez, architect from Eniad Architects, who's working with Sidwell and has been we've been working with them for the last 2 years. Many of you were here a couple of months ago, and what we'd like to do, the presentation, like last time, will be in 2 parts. I'll just give you an update on the changes and modifications that we looked into with, in regard to some of your comments about the site. The architecture, I'd say, is primarily the same, but we'll just really flip through where we were, the modifications, and then I will turn that over to Jamie. So just as at the top, it just notes this is really just some supplemental information, just really trying to think about the entire proposal relative to the context, the residential community, the surrounding neighborhood, really for information. As before, we're becoming more and more familiar with the existing conditions and context, with some of the views that we'll show you toward the end as we consider how the perimeter of the site will be enclosed. A reminder of the concept of a unified and sustainable campus. Obviously, bringing the lower school from Bethesda here to the district will really be bringing the entire Sidwell community together, which also will eliminate more traffic movement back and forth between the 2 campuses, but it will also really allow the campus to be unified, and in terms of sustainability, a very conscious awareness of the importance of landscape as well as building. It's a campus, and both those aspects are critical. Looking again at the perimeter and the beauty of that, and one of the things that was brought up by many of the neighbors is the importance of the landscape buffer. And you'll see throughout this presentation the importance to Sidwell as well to maintain the large-scale landscape buffer that is along Upton and 37th. The other thing that we've been developing are just the use of the landscape for the school. And from a wide variety of outdoor learning environments with some of the photographs along the bottom, the range, it's really expanding and extending what currently exists on campus. There's a beautiful wetland, use of outdoor space, and that's emerging and evolving. Outdoor play environments, so it's not only for education, but for play for the children, and really taking advantage of the beauty of the existing site so that it really won't be altered dramatically, but it will be capitalized on for the children. And even gardens, a productive landscape. There is a real commitment to green roofs on the building as we transform and adaptively reuse the Washington Home building, so gardens on the roof as well as the ground plane. And here you can see those green roof opportunities. And again, the green roofs not only for productive landscape, but also it reduces the heat island effect from the existing buildings. So here, this is what the existing site plan that you're familiar with here. The red are buildings that are proposed to be removed. One is the one-story piece of the Washington Home, and then 2 buildings on Sidwell's actual site, Sesner and Wannon. With that, just reinforcing the importance and all the trees that have been located on our survey, and we're going to be actually doing a tree survey, verifying the condition and caliper of each of those trees, working with Andrew Pogon, the landscape architect. The proposed site plan that we showed you when we came in October, you saw that there was the consideration of putting tennis courts and a more rectilinear the traffic pattern. And one of the things that we've looked more closely and carefully is how we could reuse, so again, to avoid demolition, is how we could reuse an existing roadbed. So this is, as you can see very lightly, the dotted line of the parking. So this would be, and Jamie's going to go into this in much greater detail, but how we can reuse that existing roadway and then turn what is currently a parking area into more of a play area adjacent to the new gymnasium. The yellow and the blue indicate the majority of the project is really going to be adaptive reuse of the Washington Home building, but then there will be a new gym building and a new campus center on the internal part of the Sidwell campus. Again, this is the revised, which shows, again, reuse of the roadway, the small parking area here, but then this will become a new play area. And I'm just moving up through. That was the first level. Let me just go back for a second. A reminder, this is where the main entrance that you know today for Washington Home, which will be the main entrance into the building, adjacent the gym, and then the renovation of the rest of the building. As you move up to the second level, as you know, the building is a lower building. This will be the new gym, enveloped by a green roof. And this is where the grade is very dramatic. That was a diagram on one of the earlier slides, but it's almost 2 stories from the Washington Home site up to the upper level of the existing Sidwell campus. So again, just the revision showing the site work that's consistent. And then as you come to the proposed third level, just putting that in context, but nothing really has changed in terms of the scope of what the building and the renovation and new construction is. And I'm just, again, showing you that revised circulation pattern as you move through. The section has really remained unchanged from the existing. This is the piece that will be demolished to accommodate the new gym. The height of the new gym will not exceed the height of any of the buildings already at the Washington Home. But the only important thing is Sidwell's commitment to preserving the landscape buffer. There are actually trees in here, but this is just trying to diagrammatically indicate that preservation of all those existing trees. And again, the same thing, nothing has changed. Here you can see in the backdrop the height of the existing Washington Home. The gym fits within that envelope. But the only difference is just indicating that commitment to the tree buffer along Upton, the other along 37th. So these are the aerial views that we showed you last time, and the only difference really is in the site work. The yellow being new construction, the blue being the renovation of Washington Home, and here again the preservation of the tree buffer, trees within there, but an open play area. And the same view, the view from the north with Upton in the foreground, and again, this more naturalistic landscape, and again, less demolition, which we think is obviously a benefit to everybody. The one piece that's new and has been brought up is how the property will be fenced. And so I can't tell you exactly that today, but I think the idea of safety and security for the children is the most important piece. But how we're looking at what that can be is 2 parts. One is trying to really assess the landscape and topography of the site itself. The very much steep topography along this wooded area for outdoor learning and play. This is where the drive, which will be used just in the morning and afternoon, but that will be a multi-purpose play area when it's closed most of the day, a play field, and then to the western edge, more of these sort of smaller areas. It's actually a really beautiful piece of the property. But the point to this is how then does that need to secure? This doesn't mean this is where the fence is. This is just where the property line is. So what we have been working with Andrew Pogon again is to really think about the character of Sidwell in this neighborhood and how it can soften that edge. So this is the beginning of just a survey all along the perimeter, of 37th, Wisconsin is somewhat irrelevant. It's sort of grand and monumental. But trying to really play into the residential character of the neighborhood, we're really looking at this. We drove by it again today, realizing, you know, the type of fencing at Hearst. Then you have, you know, a variety of picket and wood. And then interestingly, the topography all along Upton is such that you actually have to step up. So there's pretty much, except at the corner, actually a stone retaining wall, and then stepping up to that. And so what does that mean, again, for the design? It's emerging, but there's a lot of topography here, so the ability to maybe soften that edge, and I think more importantly, if it's a fence or a wall, and sometimes just a hedge. So again, how the landscape can be something that will soften that. And one last piece is knowing that when the school isn't in session, there aren't children on the property, that there will be strategic locations of gates so that then this campus can be used on the weekends and after hours. So that will be something we'll be able to share as the design is refined. So I think with that, this is the aerial view that we showed you last time, but I think importantly, just showing again this adjustment to the landscape that we're proposing. And again, you can really see that this wooded edge, obviously it's quite different now in many ways. The change of seasons makes it more or less dense. So with that, I will turn it over to Jamie.
Good evening. Just find a good place to stand here. Quick overview of what I want to present this evening. Start with the site access and circulation. I know that many of you have seen this. For those of you who haven't, I think this will be a good opportunity to get you oriented. I will note that there's a fairly substantial change since our meeting last week that I want to make sure that you all are aware of. I understand there was some confusion from our meeting last week in terms of the trip generation, how much traffic the project is going to generate, and so I've tried to simplify that and I'll go through that in more detail this evening. And then I want to go back through what we're calling our transportation management plan, which is made up of 3 components. The operations management that really deals with how traffic enters and exits the site, how we manage traffic on site to make sure we have the most efficient operation possible. The demand management component of that, which is how we are going to go about reducing vehicular traffic to and from the campus, and then a monitoring plan so that you all have some assurance that what we're saying will really come to fruition and mean what we say. And again, there are some additions to this plan that I think you all will be hopefully happy with. Today, there are a number of drop-off locations. The middle school currently drops off on the street on 37th Street. The upper school drops off in the garage below grade. Zarman Circle handles, it's really a secondary access point for a few drop-offs and pickups. Mostly, I think, for students being picked up after school activities. This is primarily the Zarman House function. The service drive off of Wisconsin Avenue is located here. And then to exit the garage, you exit and come out at that traffic signal that also serves Fannie Mae.
Use your mic. It's not working.
Is that better?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Hold it close enough. I apologize.
Yeah.
In terms of the proposed site access and circulation, the key change from our last meeting last week is that 37th Street will be used only for drop-off in the morning. All pickups in the afternoon that are currently using 37th Street will move to the Wisconsin Avenue side. We've heard a lot of feedback about the congestion in the afternoon, and so our thinking is that if we remove that drop-off activity in the afternoon, relocate it to this new drop-off or pickup area on Wisconsin Avenue, that removes that traffic from 37th Street and will reduce the congestion on 37th Street. Upper school will continue to drop off in the garage. The lower school, again, we're handling all of that drop-off and pickup on site so that parents dropping off their children would enter via what is now the service drive for the walking from home. and then they would enter a queue on site. And when it's their turn, they would come into this circle, drop off, or in the afternoon pick up their child near the front entrance, and then they would exit onto Upton Street. So this is just a blow-up of that area on the lower school site. Because we have removed the tennis courts that previously were shown along here, and we've decided to use the existing drive aisle for the Washington Home, we've lost a couple of stacking spaces, but we're still able to stack 58 cars on the lower school site. And as you'll see in a minute, with the management plan that we're putting in place, we are very confident that the 58 stacking spaces can more than accommodate the queue for the lower school. It's really the pickup. The drop-off is much less intense because it happens much quicker. In the afternoon is when you have the longer queues. And like I said, we're very confident that the 58 spaces can adequately handle that lower school payment. And then I mentioned the new area on Wisconsin Avenue. Again, we're maintaining the current tennis court location rather than relocating them as we had shown in a previous plan, which allows us to maintain that tree buffer on 37th Street. And so our plan is to use the existing service drive during morning drop-off and afternoon pickup for cars entering. So we'll double stack cars waiting in the queue on that service drive. You can see we'll have a couple of traffic control officers out there making sure that the traffic moves efficiently and everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. And then that traffic control officer will alternate these two lanes to fill in this part of the queue, which is a single file queue where the students will be dropped off and picked up. And that new area allows us 21 stacking spaces. Okay, in terms of trip generation, we're looking at this from a peak hour perspective, particularly with schools. There's a very concentrated amount of traffic in a short period of time. So we're looking at the AM peak hour as well as the PM school peak hour when school lets out. Today, the lower school generates, you can see here, 335 trips in the morning. It's important to note a trip is two-way, inbound and outbound. So that 335 is the number of inbound and outbound trips at the current lower school. In the afternoon peak hour, it's 251 trips. The Sidwell is projecting an additional 100 students that will be spread across the 3 divisions. The trip generation anticipated with those additional 100 students is shown here. So an additional 117 trips in the AM peak hour, an additional 63 trips in the PM peak hour. The Washington Home is in operation today. It generates a number of trips. And so in this line, what you see is the number of trips that are currently being generated by the Washington Home that would be removed once the Washington Home ceases operation. And so you can see then the subtotal of trips when you take the lower school plus the additional 100 students minus the Washington Home trips. That's the number of new trips projected on the site. However, we are proposing a 30% reduction for our transportation management plan. We previously indicated 20%. We went back, we looked at it, we've added some elements to our van management plan, one of which will include busing. And so we feel certain that we can achieve a 30% reduction. We'll commit to the 30% reduction, follow that up with annual monitoring. And that 30% reduction doesn't just apply to the lower school, it applies to all 3 divisions. And so when you apply that 30% reduction to all 3 divisions, this is the amount of traffic we're reducing. And so you can see then the number of net new trips, taking all of that into account, in the AM will actually be generating slightly fewer trips during the morning peak hour than is currently at the school today. And in the PM, we'll be generating a slightly higher amount of trips, 26 additional trips than what is there today. So I mentioned the transportation management plan. This slide just outlines the operations management, how we're improving efficiency, particularly for the lower school. Those of you familiar with the existing lower school understand it's a little bit complicated because of the limited queuing space they have on their site. So parents are actually parking sometimes several blocks away or in the parking lot across the street, walking to the school, picking up their children, and then walking back to the school. And by providing all of that stacking the efficiency. And something else we're doing to improve the efficiency is to expand the pickup window, and we're giving parents a half hour to pick up their students instead of 15 minutes. So spreads that out a little bit better and makes it a more efficient operation. In terms of, I think we reviewed this on a previous slide, but just to make sure everybody's clear. So in terms of accessing the lower school site, parents will enter from 37th Street, they'll exit on Upton Street. 37th Street during the day will be closed to traffic, and only service vehicles will be allowed to use it. So it's only during the morning drop-off and only during the afternoon pickup that service drive is open to vehicular traffic other than service vehicles. And again, we're moving the pickup for the middle school to Wisconsin Avenue, so the traffic that is entering the lower school site on 37th Street won't be competing with traffic that is already there for the middle school operations. I mentioned the drop-off for the upper school will continue to happen in the garage. We'll be implementing a system so that as a car enters the lower school site, they have a number, a tag in their window with a number, so that the traffic control officer on site can radio that back to the school, and the students can get prepared and they can start shepherding the students out, so that by the time the parent arrives at the door, this child's ready to go. Again, just increasing the efficiency there. In terms of demand management strategies, the school will provide a shuttle to Metro for students and faculty that take Metro. They'll provide a bus or buses to the Bethesda or another offsite location depending on where the demand is. Right now it looks like Bethesda is probably the best base, but that may change over time. They will be providing another of transit or alternative commute incentives. Employees will have the pre-tax transit benefit. The school will enroll in guaranteed ride home. They're going to promote the school transit subsidy program that's available for DC residents. We'll be exploring the possibility of a capital bike share station near campus. New additions since the last time you all saw this, providing $100 monthly smart trip cards to Virginia and Maryland financial aid students who take public transportation, providing $135 smart trip cards for faculty and staff who take public transportation, and then providing a $240 annual stipend for faculty and staff who bike to campus on a regular basis. We'll also be looking at carpool matching assistance, which will provide an online interactive map to help people link up with other people that are interested in carpooling, and then registering with the Commuter Connection School Pool program. And then we'll be doing some outreach and education, just making sure that they promote programs that promote walking and biking to school. VDOT actually runs a very effective program where they actually come to school and hold transportation events and get students involved in walking and biking to school. And again, another change from last time, the goal, 30% reduction across all divisions. And then, as I mentioned, the monitoring plan. So you are assured that what we're saying will be followed through on. SIGWA will conduct a monitoring study that would be submitted to DDOT and the ANC. They've agreed for the first year to do that quarterly, recognizing there's a lot of changes that are taking place, and so we may need to make some more frequent adjustments. So the first year, perform the monitoring study quarterly. After that, it would be done annually for a minimum of 2 years, depending on how well they meet their goals. The monitoring study will evaluate the number of trips that are generated during the morning and afternoon school peak hours. They will also be looking at queues to ensure that the lower school queue is handled on site and not spilling out onto 37th Street or Upton Street, and to make sure that the other queuing areas don't exceed their capacity either. They'll be doing a mode split survey, which will be important because if for some reason they don't meet their goals, that mode split survey will help them make changes necessary so that when they do the monitoring report again in the future, they can make sure that they meet that goal. And they'll be providing a list of the TDM measures that are in effect, and again, any changes that might be necessary in order to continue meeting those goals. And obviously we still have to work out the details with DDOT, but the plan would be to conduct that for at least 2 years, assuming that they would meet those goals for 2 years. If they don't meet the goals, then they have to continue monitoring until they do meet the goals for 2 consecutive years. And so with that, I will open it up to questions.
Great. So we'll start with commissioners first. I'll just comment quickly. Brian, I'm really pleased to see changes since the last meeting. I think there's a lot to digest here, but the way you actually showed like how many cars and things like that, it was far more useful to me. And I think this plan and the fact you might use buses and things is pretty sounds pretty good. So. So, do any commissioners have questions at all?
I have a question. Did you say that the street would be 37th?
We can't hear you.
Did you say the mic doesn't work there? I'll speak loud. Did you say that the street would be closed 37th in the morning?
No,
No, so the entrance will
Just
be
the
closed,
entrance.
right? So that only service vehicles. Let me see if I can go back to a slide here.
Is 37th being considered to be one way?
No.
No.
Okay.
I think she
We
meant the
heard
driveway.
sort of both
Okay.
sides of that. We heard some
No,
members of the community wanted it to be one way, but some were adamantly opposed to that. And so that really forced us to look at, what can we do, what can we control? And that's where we had the idea that, what we control is our own traffic. And so in the afternoon when the congestion is bad, we can move that pickup operation to the Wisconsin Avenue side to clean up some of that congestion. But in terms of the 37th Street, so this is the service driveway to the existing Washington home. So during the morning and afternoon pickup drop-off periods, this will be open to traffic so that they can enter the queue and wait on campus to drop off or pick up their student. During other times of the day, there will actually be a gate here so that only service vehicles can get into the service area, but traffic can't actually come onto campus. So to the extent that there are visitors during the day, they would come in and out of the Upton Street driveway.
Okay. And then I have a question about Upton Street. That is a very tight street, and I know there's been a lot of comments about it, especially at Wisconsin, where they have put the concrete pathway in that you cannot turn left, you have to turn right. Has any consideration been done with that with DDOT?
So we're actually, I have somebody back in the office literally as we're speaking, and analyzing what it would mean to take out those traffic calming islands and open that back up to allow for left turns. Again, we're in a tough spot. We didn't ask for those to be in there.
Right.
Some members of the community don't want them, some do.
Yep.
And so I think what we can do is we can analyze what it would mean if they were removed and present the fact. And we have no control over whether those are in or out. That's obviously DDOT's jurisdiction. So I think the best we can do is sort of present the facts to DDOT and let them weigh in on that issue.
Please do so, because there are a lot of comments about that island.
Does anyone else have questions? All right, so we'll use the mic. We'll start in the front with Chuck and just keep going because lots of people have lots of questions. If you speak on the mic, introduce yourself and what your association may or may not be.
I'm Chuck Lillum. I was lived about a block from this for 30 years, and I'm the principal organizer of the Springland Farm community, which basically surrounds the school. There are 100 homes that surround the school. And we have an LLC. It hasn't taken a position yet, so I'm only going to be talking about my own views of it. The only point I want to make is that there is an option available. I mean, we have a major concession here about the pickup in the afternoon moving to Wisconsin, but there is an option available at the Potomac School where they do have a bus-only plan. And I'll hand out a copy of the materials about that, and Paula will be handing out copies around it. So that is an option we know will solve the problem with the middle school, which is currently a mess, and whatever would happen with the lower school. We know that option would fix it. Now, there may be reasons that Sid will advance why that isn't an acceptable option, but I think we ought to know that there is an option, a bus-only option that does work at Potomac School. It's very popular with the parents. It doesn't cost the school because they shift the cost to the parents. Some aspects of it are free and some aspects of it are. So that is a fallback option here to keep in mind if we think that the plans that we come up with here are not sufficient to solve the current mess of traffic in the neighborhood or the future mess once the lower school comes in. And then just regarding the traffic island at the end, this was DDOT's proposal. DDOT approved it. It is designed to reduce cut-through traffic. Now, if we add cut-through traffic to a gridlock situation, which we have now with the school, and it also includes the gridlock from Hearst, and then you add cut-through traffic to that by eliminating the traffic island, you have a double disaster. So I think the community, I don't know the position, I think we would vehemently oppose changing the traffic island and would expect that the status quo, which is DDOT's status quo, would continue.
Do you expect significant cut-through traffic to a gridlocked area?
Can't hear you.
Well, if his question is whether the gridlock traffic, the cut-through traffic would be coming in exactly the same times of day as you have the school traffic problem, the morning and the evening.
But
So if you already have gridlock because of Hearst and Sidwell, and you might have more gridlock because of the lower school coming in, and then you add cut-through traffic, which is now to some extent diverted from Upton, you have a double disaster.
My question is, if I'm looking to cut through, I wouldn't be looking to cut through in areas in which there's gridlock already.
Well, okay. I don't think that, I think they're gonna cut through, they're gonna experiment with every possible cut through. And obviously, the traffic island makes it less likely in the morning rush that they will cut through on Upton. They still can get to Upton. They have to go around, to some extent on Van Ness, but it obviously is going to increase the traffic on Upton if the traffic island is not there at the worst possible times.
Thank you.
Oh, wait, sorry, I had a question. I have a question for you. I read your Potomac School policy as an alternative. Did you all look at the field school policy? Because I know they had a lot of issues with the neighborhood, and they had some restrictive policies in place. Does anybody know how they did it on Foxhall Road?
That's the one that we researched.
Okay.
We should look into field.
Yeah, I think that might be one to
Because it's a little different.
Do they have a busing plan also?
Yes.
They do, but they don't bus 100%. If I remember correctly, they're busing somewhere around 30 to 40% of their students. And my recollection is, and I would need to verify this, but my recollection is that they had a monitoring plan similar to what we're proposing, where they had a number of trips that they had to meet in that monitoring plan, so they couldn't increase their trip generation beyond a certain threshold. But their busing plan, like I said, is not 100% busing, but they do have a busing program.
They can speak that they run shuttles, and they also have
Thank you.
a policy where you have to have 2 students per car if you drive.
Right.
Oh, that's right.
That's what it is.
Can I ask a follow-up question? So, in terms of your estimate of 30% reduction based on your plan, when you're thinking about the shuttles and the buses that you're adding, what's the basis for your estimates of how many students are actually likely to use that? Is that based on the experiences of other schools like Field, or where's that estimate coming from?
We have a lot of information from other schools, both in terms of busing percentage, like what other schools are getting in terms of their busing percentage, and also how much they're carpooling. And so we don't think the right answer for us is any one solution. We think it's a combination of solutions. So it's a shuttle to Metro, a bus to an off-site location, and a carpool program. So we think that by looking at all of those different methods, each one maybe gives us a 10% reduction. But we don't necessarily think that busing alone is the answer or carpooling alone is the answer. It's the combination of those. But we do have a lot of information, and I don't have it at my fingertips, but I'd be happy to provide it in terms of, like I said, both carpooling and busing percentages for a number of other schools in the district.
Matthew Levine, I actually live literally at the top right corner of that diagram, and so I see the current issues on a daily basis. And while I want to preface my commentary by saying that I'm extremely supportive of the move to transition to lower school in this neighborhood, I do see some major issues that everyone does with the traffic in particular. As recently as just tonight, on my way to dinner, at 6:15 p.m., I tried to drive from 37th down along the Sidwell property line, and it took me 10 minutes to go that block and a half, because there were people parked on both sides, and there was a Sidwell parent, and I know it was a Sidwell parent because I pulled up alongside the Sidwell parent, who was double parked in the middle of the road with their hazards on, and I asked them what they were doing. I'm waiting for my kid to get out of the gym. So we suggested as well, as part of this plan, I thought one solution was to analyze whether or not we should have one side of parking, one side of no parking on 37th, and potentially on Upton as well, because neither of those streets are 4-lane roads, period, in a statement, and whether or not it's at pickup or drop off or 6 p.m. or any time when you have cars parked on both sides of the road, you have no traffic moving back and forth. Second piece of commentary, I know everyone was very confused with your first slide about the traffic, the numbers coming in and out. I'll say as a investment banker, spent more than my fair share of time putting together slides. I can have something read whatever I want to say. I think this slide was even worse. And that's my honest feedback, because the only changes from the slide that you gave us the first time where there were dollar numbers around the same commentary that, same traffic demand management plan that you put together, but there was more stuff on the paper, and all of a sudden the number went from 20 to 30%. And so I look at that, and all I saw was the subtotal line, because the 30% from the other schools is not going to come on that corner. The 30% is going to come from Wisconsin. Is a large portion of that 30% is coming from the other area. Because if you look at 30% of the incremental 400-some trips, that gives you a net increase of 280 on that corner. And so I just want to point that out in light of what I know some of the other neighborhood, the people in the neighborhood are trying to contribute here, in that it's a big issue that is much worse today than I think you guys might be giving it credit for. This afternoon I got home early from work. Forget the 6 p.m. thing. I got home at 3:50, and I saw a kid almost get hit. And I think based on the age, it must have been a middle school kid. It was bad. And I see it on a daily basis, multiple times a week. I see parents running that stop sign. I see traffic congested. I see parents parked on the corners on both sides, so you can't see when you're going to turn. And it's illegally parked, and any monitoring plan has to involve enforcement by police, because otherwise you're going to get people double parked and have, we've seen it. It doesn't work right now. I've said my piece, but I think I agree, generally speaking, we have to get pretty drastic. I really like the transition of the pickup to the other side for the middle school. I think that's going to be a huge help. But I think enforcement will be a big thing.
Are you all going to do any enforcement, either
We're just
with
going.
security force or parents, or how are you going to address that? Because
Fred was talking earlier about the possibility of hiring off-duty MPD. That's something that we could look into.
Okay.
In terms of directing traffic and also looking at enforcement. But that's something that we could add to the matrix of possibilities.
because that's a huge problem at public schools also.
The enforcement.
Yes,
Yeah.
the enforcement.
And whatever we can do to help with that.
And I want to say your comment is very good about making that street not have one side of parking. I know parking is at a premium, but it is an extremely tight street.
Yeah, it
I
just
just
seems
can't
logical.
imagine all these cars coming down at whatever time, AM and PM.
Well, they don't move. They just sit there and kind of,
Is it zoned?
It's
The
zoned.
street? Okay.
Yeah, but
Yes.
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, it's tight. You can,
It's not zoned, I don't think.
I think it is zoned.
No, I don't.
It has like
one side-
weird
yeah,
signage.
But nobody pays attention to any of the signage.
Shut
anyways.
down.
And it's not
Furnish
enforced.
on the street is shut down. You can't get through it.
Okay. So Mary Beth, you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question about the monitoring. Is that self-monitoring, or does a third party monitor? Who
Yeah,
does that?
so the school would hire a traffic engineering firm to conduct the monitoring. they would send personnel out to do the monitoring and submit the study that DDOT would review, and copy would go to the ANC as well.
I have a follow-up question on that. That's supposed to be quarterly for the first year and annually thereafter?
That's right.
And is that quarterly if it's, I guess, during that first year, is that assuming it's met every quarter, or the quarterly monitoring would extend, or?
Well, the quarterly, we originally had proposed annually from the get-go, and then I think we had heard some concerns from the neighbors, and the quarterly was really to address the concern because there would be new operations taking place. We wanted to be more responsive. So, for example, 4 months after the school opens, we don't wait 6 or 8 months to find out if there's a problem. We do it within the first quarter so we can identify what the problem is, adjust, and then monitor it again another 4 months to make sure those adjustments work.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the intent behind the quarterly.
Do you anticipate any difference in traffic flows during the different quarters, the seasons? Does that affect the traffic flow?
Well, we would obviously make sure we're doing it when school's in session on a typical day, to make sure we're capturing that typical day.
Mm-hmm. But not like time of year?
Right.
Like,
It's still quarterly, so that's a little misleading. So we'd be doing 4 times during the school year, not 4 times
I understand.
during the calendar year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So my only question is, do you have more parents driving during the winter months than when the weather's nicer?
Potentially. Normally, rain also,
Sure.
If it's a rainy day, you might have more parents dropping off, so the kids that typically walk don't have to walk.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we could put some stipulations in there in terms of, obviously that first year, if we're doing it 4 times, we're gonna hit the winter months.
Ma'am, how many kids
Sorry, can I finish answering
in
this
our
question?
neighborhood goes to Sidwell?
Just,
Sir, let's answer his question, and we're going through, and then you can speak when the
My-
microphone gets.
I'd like to see some stipulations in there about, the sort of high water mark and making sure that the annual testing aligns with that to make sure that
I
this is.
understood.
Yeah,
That's a good
sure.
point. We can certainly do that.
Thank you.
Brenda?
Yeah, can I just add one more question about your baseline? As I remember reading the BZA comments you filed in October, and it's been a long time, and I certainly haven't had time to read all those. You said that your baselines were set at a time when school was having reading days. I take it a lot of kids can stay home, so the baseline is a little lower than it should be, and then you said the city has the highest traffic of any of the private schools in the Washington area.
Right.
So I think when you talk about 30% reduction, it's a really important gesture, and we hope to accomplish it, but we're starting at a high level already.
Yeah, so just a couple of things. So you're right, the baseline that we did for that preliminary study was done when reading days were in effect. We went back out in the fall during a typical day and reestablished that baseline. So the numbers I presented here and the study that we're submitting to DDOT includes that updated data.
Okay, that's good. I'm Brenda Van Ness. I live on Van Ness Street, and I'm submitted comments today on behalf of the Van Ness Street Coalition. I've lived there for 30-odd years. The traffic has gotten worse and worse, and it is the primary concern of this is the thought that traffic will be shunted from Upton Street and from, the other Sidwell areas directly onto Van Ness. Our street is seriously overcrowded. We have pleaded with you all for support. We have pleaded with DDOT in the past for support. We have pleaded with the local police, please put somebody out there and stop the trucks. The traffic is beyond what is tolerable during rush hours. And people know Karen Perry used to be very sympathetic. She remembers how overloaded our street is. We had a series of requests, but of course the thing that opens up the whole route, and we are the proponents of this, is taking out those concrete barriers and admitting that Upton Street is the most desirable direct access route into Sidwell's lower schools. The access route would be going down Upton into 37th or up Upton from Reno Road, going from Wisconsin to 37th, 37th into the turnoff, and then into the school ground. That's what makes a lot of sense. There is a backup now during rush hours on Van Ness. If you don't allow them to use Upton, you will see traffic, people who get frustrated, drivers who get frustrated with the backups on Van Ness will immediately bleed into the next streets, which are Beasy and Warren, and they will take shortcuts through 37th and 38th to line through those areas. So you're going to have problems. Our streets are not as wide as Upton. Upton is 4 lanes. We'll get out there with a tape measure. parking, we have parking on one side, we are heavily traveled. We cannot accommodate anymore. To give you a clear example, on a recent Friday afternoon, last Friday at 3:45, I left to go from the 3600 block to Wisconsin. At 3:45, traffic in the 3800 block was completely solid. It was impossible to get through, and so people had to wait in the 3700 block until the 3800 block cleared onto Wisconsin. After I got onto the 3800 block, it meant that it took 4 lights to get through onto Wisconsin. And I only got through a left turn signal because there was a huge waste management truck that rolled its way through the yellow line. So please do not underestimate the traffic load on Van Ness. Please do not shove traffic from Upton where it should be onto Van Ness. And we have a very discreet, very clear limited request that we ask ANC to support us on. That is, remove the concrete barriers, and we will talk to anybody about the traffic load and tell them how important that is. That means DDOT and everyone. And open up access to Sidwell. Change that light at Wisconsin and Upton so that it's possible to turn left onto Upton for the northbound traffic. Our understanding from previous presentations in December community meeting was that 43% of the traffic is expected to come from the north, which means that we will get that traffic. Make it easy for them to come in on Upton during the school drop-off and pickup. Going through some of the other recommendations, Sidwell's been very good about monitoring. They seem to have picked that up very quickly. But just to read through them to make sure that you've all seen them in case you didn't have a chance to read everything. We've got the no left turn sign on Reno, and we suggest that that be modified to allow parents to pick up their kids in the afternoon. If you're going to move all of the afternoon pickup, that may not inbound to Wisconsin and so longer than 30 seconds on the street, that may not be necessary. Another major problem for us is construction trucks. We understand that the barriers have to be removed in order to allow construction trucks to get access to the site. Once they go, there's no reason to put them back in. There's no reason to pay them money. It's going to be a necessary expense that's only going to make it harder on our overcrowded streets. So, first of all, there needs to be a construction management plan. We need a person at Sidwell we can talk to and call if there are trucks that we think are going to Sidwell. We arranged this with UDC. They were very good. They had a contact person. They've actually made a real effort to keep trucks off Van Ness and out of our neighborhood. So we'd like a similar agreement with Sidwell and a similar name. And then we'd like to see that we find out a little bit in advance of what Sidwell is planning. It's terrific that they make improvements from meeting to meeting, but we have no way of knowing them. There has been no transparency in this. We've all been hit a little bit by surprise, and so some sort of advance notice in the form of posting it on your website a day or two in advance, or whatever you do, would be much appreciated. Finally, we think that given the traffic problems in the neighborhood, the ANC should not support Sidwell's request for an additional 100 students. We don't think that's going to help. We think traffic is a serious problem. There's plenty of time. We have said, we've heard Sidwell say, oh, we aren't going to add that immediately. If they're not going to add the students immediately, there's no reason you have to approve it and push it through as part of this approval process. We ought to find out what happens in the real world in terms of traffic in our neighborhood before that's approved. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I've got not a question, but just a directional comment that your statements, while I obviously appreciate the neighborhood concerns, was directionally what I heard was, let's move the problem from Van Ness to Upton, not let's try to figure out how to address the problem.
No, let's share it.
Let's share it.
No, so you take your fair share. We've already got more than our fair share. That's what they're trying to do with the barriers, is to push traffic off Upton onto our side.
What I think they're trying to address with the bus plan, potentially, or other drastic options, is a way to improve everybody's situation.
Okay.
I have no doubt that Van Ness is awful as well. Yeah.
So, can I get a sense of, raise your hand if you would like to speak tonight, so I can get a sense of how many people. All right, so we're going to limit everyone's comments and questions
I'll be brief.
to 2 minutes, and I'll cut you off. If you
I want the school to
State your name.
succeed. I don't want it to succeed at the expense of us not being able to be mobile
from Van Ness, 37th Street, Brockton, and that's a case town. Using Wisconsin Avenue as an adjunct is a myth, because you don't have enough pressure, political pressure, to affect whatever's happening, all the encroachment that's happening on Wisconsin Avenue from all the other adjacent schools. They're all growing. American University, around the neighborhood. Okay? The Georgetown is going to the 7th grade, and there's students there. God knows what. We have more schools in 820 square blocks than anybody. Maybe we have more schools in Boston. And that's possible. Okay? It's not like we're doing our share. Nor would I guess that all these schools combined, private schools and public, provide schooling for 20% of the people that occupy the space. I'm being a little selfish here, just a little, okay? But I just appreciate the fact that we are overnumbered in school and undernumbered with the people that use the facilities and the great discomfort that we experience of all this expansion. Enough said.
Thank you.
Thanks. My name is Ben Burnett. I live on Van Ness as well. And so I share many of the concerns that Brenda espoused. I think the alternative plan that the coalition has drafted is an option. I share the concerns of all of our neighbors, including those on Upton, including those on Reno Road, about the traffic issues. I do feel like Van Ness takes a disproportionate share of this. I've lived in the neighborhood for 3.5 years, and I've seen the traffic get substantially worse in that time. There are cars idling for hours of the day in front of my house, as well as on Reno Road right at the intersection. And that has both air quality issues as well as safety issues for my kids. I got 2 small kids that are going to the public school right next door, Hearst, and I have to cross 37th at Van Ness and again at Upton. We walking them to school. I do think there is a need to take into account the concerns of people that do want to be able to walk their kids to school, whether that's a public school or a private school. And looking at safety issues crossing the streets, when you've got all kinds of traffic that is absolutely using Van Ness as a cut through when they shouldn't be, and this is going to add to it. I think there are very legitimate options here of looking at. I mean, to me, there are sort of 3 different options on Wisconsin alone. You could have a Wisconsin-only drop-off and pickup for Sidwell. You could have a small, very small little off-ramp to a roundabout there, since the school is obviously picking up a lot of land. They could easily have a turnaround and have people go both in and out, just a couple of feet up in and out, back onto Wisconsin, rather than going all the way down the street, as well as Quebec Street further south, where you've got a handful of houses, as opposed to the several hundred that are affected whenever there are people that are cutting through on Van Ness. So I think there are a number of different options that should be considered and explored here. The public transportation option, the busing only option is a little bit of a red herring, given I think where the broad diversity of where the Sidwell students are coming from. It's probably not like they would do a similar option to what the Potomac School does up in
Great, thank you. So hold on. So we're gonna zigzag through. So kick it back to that side if you don't mind. Yeah, and just keep working it as like a snake to the back.
I guess where I live, Van Ness Street, 17 years.
I've noticed more alley traffic between DC and Van Ness, and I'm not talking 5 miles an hour. We've got kids, I don't have kids, but there are a lot of kids in the neighborhood who play in that alley. We're trying to get in and out of our garages so we don't have to park on the street, and it's getting quite dangerous. You know, I call it the spread of AU and others an amoeba. The same thing happens with the traffic. Or just like water, you seek other places to get out, and we're just gonna be inundated. The fellow who just talked about the stacked traffic, I hear honking out in front every morning, every evening, and you look out and it's south for 3 blocks from Reno Road to Wisconsin, with people waiting to get into town. A lot of Maryland traffic.
Thank you. No, just keep going on that side, and then we'll work back. No, this side. Just keep going back. Everyone will get to speak if they wish.
Stand up.
I think what would be useful to the ANC, though, we understand the traffic's bad in Upton and Van Ness and all the streets. I don't think that's going to change magically tonight. But I think what would be useful for us is to understand your views of Sidwell's plan, what they've changed since last week and things like that, so we can understand your views of that. We can talk all night about trucks on Reno and Van Ness. I don't like them on their...
This is one of our problems. We ask for posting at least 24 hours in advance or very earlier. We've just seen it. I mean,
yeah, I think, I'm sure they...
The overall traffic plan up.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. So I have no doubt they've been working a lot to do this and probably came up with it this afternoon, or who knows when they came up with it.
Right.
But that's why they're here to present it. You've heard it, so it would be helpful to me to get your thoughts on what they're proposing and how you may modify it, rather than saying, I get it that there's trucks everywhere in the island. But anyway, sorry.
So speaking of the land plan, I think it's really important that we look at Sidwell's
We need your name.
Everybody, please say your name.
Okay.
And address.
Name and address.
So Dina wants it. Brian, can we get this PowerPoint so we could put it on
Sure,
the
we
web?
could put something on
or on your website.
On the website under the campus planning. If you go to the front page, there's a button on the sidwell.edu. If you click on that, that will take you to the planning. We'll try to get that up. We'll try to get it up more if we can.
Thank you. All right, thanks. Sorry, Dean.
This is an improvement from the last presentation by Sidwell, so thank you for that. I really appreciate you wanting to work with the community to understand how to best create a pleasant space for your students that you're moving from your Maryland campus to DC. I believe that you are looking at this process in the spirit of being good neighbors, and we appreciate that. I do want to encourage you to look at the busing option, and also want to understand as you structure the pickup and drop off on the current footprint that is Upton Street, if you're going to actually be able to stack those cars. I think Matt made an important observation that the numbers that you referenced as relates to how the stacking will occur, how the volume has been calculated, could be looked at further, and I hope you do that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
My name is Robert Rickman on Van Street. In terms of the map you show from the exit from the lower school, where you show the traffic turns left on Upton, it's misleading. Because the exit from Upton is very difficult to miss. That traffic is not going to go left on Upton. It's going to go right to circle back around to the entrance on 37th Street. So what it looks like, equal access to exit, is really unidirectional. You've created a loop. Enter on 37th, exit on Upton, and those cars are turning back to 37th. So without it being able to address the blockage up front, the plan, well, it's misleading.
Somebody go.
Okay, I'll go. I'm Christy Weiss. I live on Upton Street. And I too also really appreciate the improvements that you've made. And
one of the things that we haven't spoken about yet is the fact of why did this happen? Nobody's really talked about the fact that the expansion of Hearst a few years ago, the expansion of the upcoming community center, and the expansion of Sidwell's Middle School when the renovation was done have added to traffic in such a way that all this conversation has generated that. So if we take a look at the proposal that Sidwell's making now, I think you're absolutely right that you have to address it from multiple ways. I think 100% busing probably isn't going to work. It doesn't work at Potomac School either, for that matter. Potomac School, to my neighbor who mentioned earlier that the geography might not be such because Sidwell serves such a large geographic footprint. Well, so does Potomac School. So you do need to know that. What I wanted to say is that Potomac School allows kindergarten parents to drive their children. They also allow seniors to drive their cars because they recognize that both of those times in a parent's life or in a student's life are really important to them. So they also have a plan that is multi-purpose, if you will. They have an awful lot of busing because the neighborhood requires it, but they also do have some flexibility of vehicles being driven. The other thing that I do see that's missing from this plan that I don't think Sidwell's going to be too happy about my saying, but monitoring is one thing, but penalties are an important way to enforce good quality of effective compliance. One of the things that Potomac School did was when they asked for to build their art center, and the neighborhood said, well, yes, they also then asked if they could raise the number of students, and the neighborhood said, well, let's monitor compliance with the busing, and if you're compliant in the first year, then you can add 25 of the students that you like. And if you're not compliant, then you can't add those 25 students. And then the next year they could add another 25, and the next year another 25, and the next. So there was real meat to the monitoring, and I think that there were real penalties as well. In fact, they talked about whether they would have to actually pull back if they didn't meet the monitoring of the trips on campus. So that's really about all I have to say. Thanks for everything, and I do think there needs to be some monitoring as well as some increased attention to busing and movement of traffic off of 37 Upton and Van Ness and onto Wisconsin, where it really belongs. Thanks.
Richard Danzig, I live on Upton Street, and after Christy Weiss's good statements, I think my main claim to credibility is that I'm a neighbor of Christy Weiss's. I'd like to just take a different tack here and suggest that there are two positives that I think we're not making the most of here, and there's one fundamental problem that I'd just like to suggest a path forward. The positives are very strikingly, first, Sidwell. I think you all are unusually good at being neighbors and dealing with the environment, about listening to us and trying to be responsive, and I think that's a huge asset. The second is the neighborhood. I think the neighborhood's attitude towards Sidwell is basically welcoming. I think despite the issues that we've described, the reality is that most people would prefer you to most other alternative uses of the site. And I have no doubt that if the proposal were now advanced to convert this site from Sidwell's lower school to the Washington home, we would all be up in arms describing a variety of disadvantages that we're afraid of. So I think those two things provide the basis for really some understanding between us. I think the problem is that we're driven, I believe, by Sidwell's desire, maybe need, to have a Board of Zoning Adjustment decision on January 26th, which leaves us very little time. And we're not, at the moment, doing a very good job of talking with one another. We have occasionally had, I think, useful conversations, but when Sidwell comes forward and presents a plan like this evening, many people are commenting, hey, we don't have time to respond to it, et cetera. And you're experiencing also the sort of slings and arrows of the neighborhood that's suffering from traffic in a way that everybody is describing. There are also real issues about the fence and some issues which have only been mentioned on have a better way of talking with one another outside this forum so that the ANC gets crystallized for it. And basically, we found all these ways of agreeing on some things, and here are the 1 or 2 or 3 things we particularly don't agree on. We've got a mechanism for doing that to some degree through the LLC that we've created for Upton Street and Tilden Streets. We need to add to that some representation from 38th Street and from Van Ness. We need to sit down with you, and you need to sit down with us in between. I don't think it works in between now and the next ANC. I don't think it works for Sidwell to think that it can defer these issues to after BZA approval. Well, we'll build a fence and it will be beautiful and symmetric with what the neighborhood cares about. We'll look at busing at Potomac School later. If you want to stick to the schedule you're describing, we all, with some sense of urgency, have to find a way to talk to one another about brass tacks in a way that probably will never be acceptable to the whole neighborhood, but will, by and large, be acceptable to most people on most counts. So I just would encourage that for the time ahead.
Sorry, just keep working on that side.
My name is Betsy Goodfellow, and after last week's meeting, I was a little confused about the actual size of Sidwell School. So I looked it up on its own website, and just for the community's benefit, I want you to know that currently, across both campuses, enrollment is 1,149 students. There are 156 teachers and 112 staff, and that is a lot of people.
Thank you.
One more in the back, and then we'll.
Thanks. My name is Gina Polidoro. I live at 3520 Tilden Street. I'm a neighbor. I'm also a Sidwell parent. My daughter walks to school, so I'm not adding to the traffic burden. I just wanted to talk briefly about enforcement and safety. Many people have, well, first of all, I appreciate Sidwell's, the changes they've made. They seem very responsive to the community, and I feel like, at least from my point of view, it is a transparent working relationship. And I think that it can move forward in a very nice vein. I did want to echo some safety concerns that people have had with small children, not just at Sidwell, but at others, and also enforcement. Other schools, Murray and the Washington International School, employ MPD. They're not off-duty, they are officers. They are stationed at the campus at drop-off and pickup, and they help direct traffic, and they help maintain a sense of order on the street in a way that, you know, it's difficult to speed down the street when you know there is an MPD there directing traffic or stopping traffic or directing you not to park somewhere. And I think it's something that Sidwell can look at as they move forward. And I've already forwarded that information to Mr. Turner at Sidwell. So it's something that maybe could be incorporated into the plan.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think that's a good idea. Sheridan has an MPD officer, and it keeps the speeds down around there. So something I hope you'll look at.
I'm Victoria Cordova. I don't live in the immediate vicinity of Sidwell's Bends, but certainly close enough that I'm always trying to dodge the traffic that we've been hearing so much about. One thing I haven't heard anyone mention is the fact that we've got a post office right in that vicinity, which generates traffic. Again, it seems to me that Upton is going to be a real obstacle course for any of us that have normally access to the post office that way. I use Reno Road, and I must say, John Eaton School is a terrible example of what happens on drop-offs or pickups. It just stops the traffic completely, and I just hope the same thing is not going to happen, and I fear it just because of what we've been hearing tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Patrick Drescher. I live on Tilden Street like Gina, so we're sort of at the worst point because we come out, we're on a dead end, we have no way to go but up to 37, so traffic is a concern. That being said, I want to make sure we come together as a community, because I do agree with Richard, I agree with many others in this room, that Sidwell will be, already is, and will continue to be a great neighborhood. And I don't have kids at Sidwell. My son goes to MTS, but I still welcome Sidwell to the community. I think we have to figure out the traffic situation, and I think we have to look at it globally. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned yet is Hearst. Hearst, there's got to be some coordination between you and Hearst when it comes to using those neighborhood streets, because you could be well-intentioned and you could ask the Sidwell parents not to park, but the parents dropping off at Hearst may be using that same spot. So just please keep that in mind. I also think we as a neighborhood cannot impose kind of draconian requests on the other side. So for example, if we say busing for everybody starting next year, or we will never approve anything, I think that would be extremely unreasonable. I think some solution that incorporates various things is the way to do it. I think a traffic cop on the 37th and Tilton corner would be a great first step, and it doesn't seem that complicated. There's a crossing guard who's kind of the opposite of a traffic cop, because she makes you wait. No, I'm nice here. So please consider those. I mean, and each of us will have our own little backyard, and we'll say, no, I want to push it that way. I think we're all going to have to compromise. But I think you're looking at the issues the right way. We appreciate what you've done so far, the responsiveness. We hope it continues. I think the timing that Richard mentioned that is a problematic issue. So let's work together.
Jeff Weiss, I live on Hopkins. I'm just going to add, thank you, a point of information about the Potomac School busing approach. They love it. The parents love it. The children love it. It's an important part of their culture. It works financially, and it absolutely works from a sustainability point of view. It could be core to Sidwell's values and everything you espouse. It is the right solution. It's the right solution for the neighborhood. It's the right solution for your parents. It's the right solution for safety. It's the right solution for the children. It's the right solution for the community. It works.
I'm Ed Newell, I live on 38th Street. And the only thing I want to add to what Richard said, I think there does need to be more dialogue and improve the process. But we would really encourage the ANC to get DDOT involved in this right up front. Not wait till after it goes through the building board and all that. Get them in our meetings. Let them, Sidwell can only do so much for the neighborhood and make so many changes, whether it be whatever street it may be. But you need to take a holistic approach to this whole thing, not piecemeal and look at each neighborhood. So I would encourage you to do that.
Have you had DDOT involved to this point? Okay.
No, I mean, we've met with DDOT. We've had a number of conversations. We are finalizing our traffic study that will be submitted to DDOT so they can do a detailed review. So yeah, then they're aware of what's going on. We've had conversations with them, and that will continue as they review the traffic.
And who are you working with? Because we know Matt Marcoux, who was here tonight,
Right. So
recused
Ryan
himself.
Westrom is our case
Ryan?
manager.
Okay.
My name is Henry Deal. I've lived 48 years on 38th Street. I've seen an awful lot of traffic studies, and a lot of them bring in during the 70s on how traffic should be managed in the area. And there aren't any simple solutions, really, except to slow people down. I can sometimes walk across my street to see a neighbor without going to the corner. But very often, because of this, just can't open the door of my car. So, I'm in favor of various kinds of traffic slowing devices called speed bumps, and a 15-mile-an-hour school zone in Forest, and perhaps a mixed mode of both busing and some carpooling, which I think has been mentioned from time to time. I think that I've said enough right now, but there aren't any simple solutions to this thing, except if people are willing to make small sacrifices on their part and start complimented with results. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else on this side? All right, so start in the back of that side.
I'm Kevin Araki, I live on Van Ness Street. I have 2 small kids at Hearst, and I think it'd be great. Glad you guys are doing the expansion. I think it's going to be a great project. Obviously, it's going to increase traffic, which is everyone's talking about. But as long as DDOT's involved, I think we get the best outcome, hopefully. But based on your one model, showing everyone getting flushed out to a degree up to Upton, you know, with that current state with the concrete at Wisconsin, I mean, it's just not going to work. But I guess I'm going to figure it out. But the more they can get put onto Wisconsin, the better. But yeah, if you can get DDOT involved, I think that'll give us the best result.
Is it possible, is it impossible to bring everybody in from Wisconsin? Then you have no traffic on our streets instead of. Did you explore that option? Why did you recommend it?
So are you talking about
AM and PM?
But are you talking about if we remove the island from Upton, or?
You've got 2 different views on the island, and obviously we think that ought to be the direct access road. Upton says, oh my gosh, no, we don't want another car on our street. But the reality is, you've got the other option, which is you bring everybody in from Wisconsin. Why doesn't that work?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Well, so we don't have room, so the drop-off for the lower school, which we've worked really hard to fit that on site, that doesn't have access to Wisconsin Avenue. So we don't have room in the garage and the new, so this site, we don't have access to Wisconsin Avenue, and we don't have room to accommodate this queue here or here with the other queues that are already happening at those locations.
It's 2 stories down.
Yeah, there is a big grade change along here, so there's no vehicular connectivity this way across the site.
You put steps.
You can walk.
Well, right, but what I'm saying is that we don't have room for this stacking in the garage where the upper school drops off, or in this new area where we're moving the middle school pickup. It just can't, it simply can't accommodate that queue.
Have you looked at any other possible stacking arrangements off of Wisconsin and the ones that you just pointed out? Just thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we have, and we've looked at potentially modifying the garage to see if we could get, another lane of traffic. We've looked at staggering hours, and we've looked at it a number of different ways, and we just don't think we can get it that much traffic, the 58 cars or 52 cars, in a combination of those 2 locations.
You've got a lot on Wisconsin. You've got a lot facing Wisconsin. And I know there's building there, there are a lot of complications.
Yeah, well, and again, part of that is because we're moving 37th, the middle school that's on 37th, and filling up what additional space we have available on Wisconsin with these people here.
Can you provide and post what number of children you'd have to get into buses and carpools in order to put everything on Wisconsin?
Sure.
Wisconsin has a compromised position. You've got 2 neighborhoods. Obviously, the Upton Street people want nothing on Upton. We don't want to have traffic shoved off onto Van Ness, BZ Warren, etc. Your compromise is Wisconsin. Nobody in the neighborhood's going to object to Wisconsin if you can find a way to do it.
But I just.
Take that. Perform magic, please. I wouldn't be here if I could perform magic.
All right, so let's continue the comments with the microphone. I would appreciate if we just finish this side, and then you can go back if you have a second comment, potentially, depending what time it is.
I'm on 37th, just north of Van Ness. Most of the points I wanted to make have already been made. I did want to stress that point again about getting out of Upton. Anyone wanting to go back south is not going to go out of Upton. They're going to go back to 37th. And we're going to have just a continuation of that situation we have right now. And I'd like to echo the comment about we need to have some sort of consequences with the monitoring that if when we finally get to a situation it doesn't reach a good steady state, then expansion should not be considered.
Sure. Just to the conversation that I think is actually helpful. It has to do with dropping kids off again on the Wisconsin Avenue side. One of the things that Potomac, I'm pretty familiar with the Potomac system. I've spoken to them in pretty good detail about what they do, and spoken with their transportation expert who's been there for 25 years. What they also do is they have satellite spots where they have parents drop their kids off very close to school, and they have satellite spots, and the parents drop the kids off, and then they bring the kids to school in small buses. So that also eliminates trips into the neighborhood in a very organized and safe kind of way.
I'm Alfred coming on 37th Street. Just a couple of points. Everybody's made very, very good points tonight. One, I detect a real change from Sidwell since 2 weeks ago, which I welcome. It's much more open. You're not ruling out busing. You're not ruling out anything that may fall in the parameters of what you need to accomplish. The tone is different. I congratulate you on that. We've still got a major problem here. And at some point, you guys are going to have to face the issue, how much more does this neighborhood accommodate traffic overall? That's the bottom line. You can remove things at the end of this street or that street, but the overall volume, we're getting slammed on all of these streets. This is a hard decision to make. It's not a slam dunk. Yeah, we would all like this expansion in theory. It's a great school. We got all of that. But the volume is really flipping out of control. And you can work it on the margins. These good people have been working it on the margins for weeks, months now. But it's on the margins. So, that's it.
Hi, my name is Tom Ham. I live at 38th of Van Ness, actually on Van Ness. And I have a fifth grader at Hearst who's been there since pre-K, so we've been there for 7 years and watched the traffic patterns on 37th Street for 7 years. I've spoken here before and also at Sidwell about my main concern being 37th Street and the dangerous conditions that exist on 37th Street for the drop-off of middle school kids at Sidwell and the elementary school kids at Hearst. And I actually have a question as opposed to offering a comment. And it's a question about process. We can't really force Sidwell to redo all the traffic patterns of our neighborhood to make our traffic problems work. And yet, as a neighborhood, we have a traffic problem we need to solve together and find a solution together, including what Sidwell is doing. And so where does Sidwell's responsibility stop and our neighborhood and the ANC's responsibility for contacting DDOT and making these things, making it clear that this is a situation that needs to be addressed begin? So it's a question of, I can't expect Wells and Associates to come and solve all the problems on Van Ness and 37th up to Warren, but we have a problem in our neighborhood which Sidwell is going to have too. How do we make it? How do we make sure that DDOT is hearing what the problem is and is going to work with this process? Because I know that you talked to DDOT, but I don't think that DDOT has really heard what this group of people has to say and what we're living with on a daily basis. So what is the process for us affecting that change in conjunction with what Sidwell is trying to accomplish?
I can answer that. I suggest from past studies being done with DDOT that you, as a group, because all your concerns are heard, and that was very good for you to say that it's not all Sidwell's problem. It is the area's problem because of the size of the streets and who's doing pass-through through those streets. It's Maryland, Virginia, DC, whatever. My suggestion is, in working with DDOT, is that you set up a meeting with your committee with public space, DDOT, go to Matt Marcoux or Ryan, who you're working with.
Ryan Westron.
Yeah.
Ryan
Westron
Westron is the point of contact. And I would call him and say you would like a meeting with DDOT. And to work with you on the traffic situation, not just from Sidwell, but from your neighborhood.
Why shouldn't ANC do that?
Because
Are you saying that ANC doesn't have the power to do
No, I mean, the ANC is a representative for that, but, and we can facilitate that, but you all need to go as a group.
I guess I'm questioning, it gets back to Mr. Gans's point, which is, yes, we all need to be communicating from one block to the other to come up with a comprehensive solution. I think Hearst needs to be part of that solution as well. I feel like sometimes I'm the only one who's speaking up on behalf of the safety of Hearst students at these meetings. And for us to go and meet with DDOT as a group of neighbors has very little weight when it's at the point of this project moving forward that we have some momentum to say this is going to be a problem. And I would like the ANC to get involved in it, to work with us and to work with Sidwell to make this a priority for the neighborhood.
Ryan, do you have a comment?
Hey, Sally.
Hey.
So I'm Ryan Hand with the Office of Planning. I don't do transportation, so don't ask me specific questions. But to Sally's point, Ted Van Houten, the Western Area Planner for DDOT, is the person who you want to reach out to about these concerns, and he'll coordinate with the various people there. And these are great conversations. That's what make sure you guys have the right point of contact.
Who is it,
Ted Van Houten, and it's Theodore.Van at dc.gov.
And it's not only just traffic, it's also pedestrian, which you should also be talking to George Branyan. It's Branyan.
Could I add one comment on pedestrians? We have talked a lot about raised crosswalks at 37th and Upton. We have one down near Pierce Mill, and you have to slow down very sharply to get across that. Right now, I think they don't want to do that because of the home. They might have ambulances coming into the home, but if you did a raised crosswalk on all four at 37th and Upton, and maybe at 38th and Upton, or maybe out Upton and Rodman or Quebec, I think those can really slow down the traffic, because I think people don't stop. I mean, going downhill from Wisconsin down to Reno is a 75-foot drop. So it is downhill, and the people are not, it's a terrible problem for speeding and running stop signs. So raised crosswalks is something I think we could probably all agree on.
You remove the concrete barriers there. If speeding were a problem, you would have left them in.
I'm talking about 37th.
You've taken up on opposite streets.
All right.
I have a
So since it's getting late, and at this point I believe everyone's had a chance to speak. If you have not, raise your hand.
I think this gentleman wanted to say. But
Okay, he can be a.
When is the ANC going to issue some sort of opinion on the project?
Assuming this continues to be on the January 26th meeting of BZA, we will have to do it at our next meeting, which is January 19th.
So there is an opportunity for you to
Oh, yeah,
express these concerns
yes.
as part of this process.
Yeah.
As the ANC, not us having to work with DDOT or separate.
But you should do that as a small,
Yeah,
small task force, and somebody from the ANC.
So
can
I'm
be on
going.
it.
So I'm going to try to set up a meeting with DDOT, and maybe we could even do a public thing where we could talk big picture, and invite Hearst and Sidwell and anyone who's interested. That's no problem, but we'll continue to talk with Sidwell and everyone else that reaches out to us to keep working on this to some sort of solution. But I think we're moving in that direction, which is good. So I guess.
So
sorry.
I'm Mark Bravin. I live at the corner of 37th and Upton, facing into the school property, just past the access road. We're the only house on that part of the street. And there have been a lot of great suggestions and a lot of appreciation shown for the further work that you've done on the traffic planning. One thing that no one's brought up, we've lived there for 22 years, and the problem has snowballed over the last few years. This construction isn't going to happen for quite a while. What about starting to work with Hearst on the existing issue, rather than waiting for the implementation of the refinements that you've added. I know you've got a lot on your plate already, and it's not going to be an easy thing to do, but we'd like to see some real serious improvement in the current situation, and that means starting now to deal with what's happened with the middle school and the Hearst expansion, creating an untenable problem. Thank you.
Just one thing to say is that we have changed our starting time so that we no longer overlap with Hearst. So there is, I think we are in at 8, and I think Hearst starts at 8:45. Right? So there is a 45-minute difference in terms of managing the traffic for the drop-off. This idea of moving to Wisconsin is something that we could look at, and I do want to say that we're in touch with Hearst regularly about this. We're happy to be in touch with them more frequently. In fact, the principal Jen was here earlier tonight. I think we wore her out, but we want to do that because it's in everyone's best interest to manage the traffic back there, and it's in the best interest of the safety of the children too.
And I wasn't meaning to suggest that you're not trying, but given what you've heard tonight, the results are yet to be noticed by the community.
And this idea of having DDOT involved, we don't know what streets to make no parking or what streets to make one way or where to put an island or not. And I think that having a more systematic look at the area is something that would be helpful to the neighbors and would also be helpful to us because we're just not equipped to solve all of those problems.
Is there any chance that you could buy more time with your deal so that all of these issues don't have to be resolved between now and the end of January?
I think we'll talk to Adam. We'll be in touch with the neighbors in terms of what we need to do moving forward. I like the suggestion that Richard has about trying to get people together from the other constituents outside of the Springland Farms community. So maybe if Van Ness can think about that, some people who would want to work with us. And I know the 38th Street group is less formalized in that sense, but making sure that your perspective is at the table too, I think would be very helpful.
Great.
So, the way to contact us is in the 2 emails, if I can just provide those. One is, a couple ways to communicate with us. One is if you go to the website, sidwell.edu, click on campus planning, there's a way that you can leave an email there. Okay, so you just send us a message through the site. The other way to do it is to communicate with Ellis Turner, who's the gentleman back here by the door. He is the associate head of school, and his email is turnere@sidwell.edu. So you can communicate with him too in terms of your wanting to participate in a broader conversation on issues such as having the Van Ness group come forward, be part of the discussions with Springland Farm and also 38th Street.
Mary Beth, last comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a suggestion in terms of process. I think, having been through similar issues over the last few years, for the neighbors to be the most effective, if you all can, if you live on Van Ness or Upton or 37th or, whatever street you live on, you all have the same issues. It's a little bit different, but Brandywine wants to send the traffic to Davenport. Davenport wants to send the traffic to Brandywine. And I think if you all can come together and find the commonality and appoint a spokesperson, and I was going to suggest the same thing for Sidwell, that, you all have just said your point of contact is Mr. Turner, which is great. But then I would also suggest that Sidwell, if you have this information on what Murray and Potomac and WIS and NPS and whatever, if you have the information on what these other schools are doing, please share it with your neighbors. And let's really, keep open dialogue here, because I think it's in all of our interests. It's certainly to Sidwell's core values to find a sustainable solution that is supportive of everyone in the community.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
You might ask them to move any conversations to the hall.
So if you're leaving, please leave quietly and don't talk at the doorway or I will yell at you. Because we have to keep doing stuff. So next up is a vote on a grant for Friends of Pierce Mill. So quickly, they asked for $3,000 to rehabilitate some pulley system. So I'll make a motion to approve the grant. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes 5-0. Please, Chuck, talk outside. All right, so next up is Chick-fil-A / ad hoc technical review committee. So, who's talking about that?
This is
I don't even
Malachi's,
know.
right?
I forget.
Yeah, why don't we just read the resolution?
So Malachi has proposed a resolution to set up a technical review committee, noting that architectural and engineering plans associated with those applications of Chick-fil-A are highly technical and lengthy. They're about an inch thick. Noting further that the applications raise a number of other issues not specifically addressed in the engineering plans. Noting that members of the ANC 3F community have specialized knowledge in this area to help us evaluate these plans. Malachi wishes to create a technical review committee to review Chick-fil-A's applications and recommend to the ANC in our January meeting their thoughts. So the committee will be at least 2 commissioners and local residents with specialized technical knowledge. So is there that's the motion is to approve this committee. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
No.
All right.
Very good idea.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes 5-0. All right, next up is a
Wait a minute. Are we doing the resolution?
What was it?
Well, did we make the change?
What
about-
change?
I sent around to everybody and
Yeah.
she agreed to?
Malachi agreed to it, I think. That's in
Agreed
there.
to the change?
It's in the version, not in the version, you know?
I just didn't want to dissolve it at the end of January.
Yeah, that's fine. That's
Okay.
fine. That's
Yeah,
fine.
we'll have that
that's
in
it.
But it'll be
Just
ad hoc
so
till the
that's
end of
split.
our
Right,
term.
okay,
right?
fine.
Idea.
Yeah.
All right, so Office of Planning resolution for the Van Ness Commercial District.
that's mine.
Who's that, Mary Beth?
Yeah, okay. Ryan, you're up.
Ryan's up.
So, for the remaining people in the audience, I'd like to.
Gee, the
Ray
whole
Neal.
place cleared out.
I would like to just sing the praises of Ryan Hand, our Ward 3 planner. Ryan and the Office of Planning released the Van Ness Commercial District Action Strategy document on November 12th of this year. And it is just a beautiful document that shows where we are now and where we want to be. Ryan, would you like to say a few
Yeah, absolutely.
words
I
about it?
actually brought copies for the commission this time.
thank you.
So thank you, everybody.
I got
Oh, and there's Val. Oh,
Well,
yeah,
they're not
that's
bad.
Val.
Mine now.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
There's not, but I'm happy to provide it.
Okay, if you have a card before you start, because I have to go.
I'm short on card, but I'll just give it to you. It's nice and easy. I am Ryan, R-Y-A-N, Hand, H-A-N-D, at dc.gov.
And your phone number.
I am 202-442-7619, and I'm happy to talk to anybody.
H-A-N-G.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you. I'm Bill Rice.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Pleasure to meet you. I'll send you my contact information.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Yeah. So I want to thank the commission. I want to thank the community for just a really great process. As Mary Beth mentioned, we just finished the public comment period on Monday, and we generally received strong and positive feedback on it. There's a little bit of concern about the Chick-fil-A, as you might have noticed. That's on people's minds at the moment, and how that relates. But overall, people are really satisfied. What this action strategy does is it's a vision and implementation strategies for public space, retail, sustainability, and commercial opportunities in Van Ness. And the idea is basically leverage the existing opportunity, align public resources, and concentrate public support for a strategy that really builds a new identity and brand for Van Ness. The position that takes advantage of its of a really strong consumer base, of a lot of great assets, having people here during the day at the university, having people who work here. These are incredible opportunities and really unleashes that potential to help the community become basically self-sustaining and its healthiest retail environment possible. And I want to thank the community and the ANC for really helping us engage this community, having some really great conversations, and have a very positive process. And I look forward to continuing to work on making this real.
So, Ryan, one of the things that that I'm especially eager to see is how we can ensure that this document is given great weight by agencies as they review different projects, whether it's Chick-fil-A or UDC or the new roadside development project, for example.
Yeah. So there's basically the great weight part of that is we can do it through the development and the planning process, and that's something our office and and the ANC carries in. We will use that in our official reports to the Zoning Commission as the Office of Planning. Our development review staff will reference this report in their opinions. That is now Office of Planning policy that we characterize our remarks on any development based on. The same is true in the ANC's remarks. So the Office of Planning, the ANC, as well as neighbors in certain proximity have standing with the Zoning Commission. So in those cases like new development, that's how this document has weight, and it uses the great weight of the bodies that have standing. And I'm happy to work with, I look forward to working with the ANC to make sure that we're crafting messages that use that great weight effectively when this comes in. I'm thrilled to be doing that in the future. In cases like Chick-fil-A, which is a challenging one, and unfortunately, this document actually does recognize the likelihood of this Chick-fil-A scenario. We didn't quite think it would happen so soon, but we recognize that the value of that parcel is as an auto-oriented drive-through use, and we recognize that was fairly likely to remain. We just didn't expect these types of changes to happen right now. So the good news is we saw it coming. The bad news is we didn't have any tools. The market is not repositioned in a way that we can change the value of the site enough to likely drive an alternative use unless the access changes to the site. And that's something that DDOT's considering very carefully right now as to how that pertains. And we work with DDOT very carefully through the Public Space Committee, and we're already working on ways to be very clear in our communications with the Public Space Committee. So again, we can use our great weight as well as the ANC. And that's an area where we will continue coordinating in the future to make sure we can be as effective as possible.
Okay. Does anybody, could I?
Please.
You've done a wonderful job, thank you. My husband even bound it for me so I could show it off to people. I do have a question.
I'm always happy.
I know, I always ask you a question. You had a complimentary document to this called the Green.
And yes, Shades of Green, a green infrastructure study for Van Ness.
Right.
We found a technical problem in it in our executive review.
Okay.
And we are working to address that right now. Basically, we're out of budget, so we're working very creatively to address that problem.
Okay.
And we are hoping to get that out as soon as possible.
Well, it goes hand in hand because we found out you weren't here earlier, but David Bardeen, I'm sure has, okay,
And that's
has
both
talked to
David,
you, right, and the whole thing about the stormwater management, which is an issue.
So that's a bit of an oversimplification, first of all. The absence of a storm sewer in that location also tells you about the grading and water flows. Basically, you don't have to have a storm sewer for green infrastructure. The hydrology and soil structures also matter. Beyond that, the way water flows away from the site, there are certain other types of stormwater management facilities that can be implemented that don't necessarily require an underdrain. For instance, you could flow water in, fill up a reservoir, and then flow back out to the gutter as an overflow. There's another type of facility that can be installed.
Would you be willing to work with our group on that, especially the Parks and Trails
I'll be honest with you, I'm going to have to advise you to DDOT. I will give you what I can. I am not a stormwater engineer, so my depth runs out pretty fast after this point.
Okay.
I know that there are a lot of options here.
Well, you can connect us with the right, even though we know some of the players, it's hard to get to those players.
Yep. And I'm happy to facilitate.
That's what a lot of the concern is.
Yep, I'm happy to facilitate. I can't guarantee there's an answer here, but I'm always happy to facilitate.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And we are using that, for what it's worth, we are actually using that draft document in our analysis and working with DDOT.
Will that also be part that we can reference that has great weight?
It will become, yes, it will
with
become.
Meredith Upchurch, her group?
And we worked with Meredith on that document as well, so we will be using that down the road.
Great.
So that's something that's where we're finding some of the elements that actually make it enforceable through
We'll-
DDOT.
And we'll be covering that at the
Right.
next Parks and Trails Committee
Okay.
meeting. I've spoken with David about that, and he'll give us all like a preliminary
Right, I
briefing
sent him.
on it. So.
Good.
Okay.
I did too. Okay,
Yeah.
so with that background, I would like to propose a resolution. Whereas the district's Office of Planning released its study, Van Ness Commercial District Action Strategy, on November 12th. The OP Action Strategy, quote, was developed in response to a community-led effort by the ANC3F Van Ness Vision Committee to reinvigorate the community. Whereas the action strategy embraces a shared vision of the Van Ness commercial corridor along Connecticut Avenue, including enhanced walkability, increased sustainable development, economic vitality, and vibrancy. Whereas the action strategy was undertaken by OP in partnership with public, private, and nonprofit sectors, seeking agency and community input with over a 12-month period. Stakeholders and participants included OP, DDOT, DSLBD, DOEE, WMATA, and UDC, real estate developers, property managers, merchants, institutions such as WAMU and Fannie Mae, ANC3F commissioners, Councilmember Mary Che's office, and Van Ness Main Street. Whereas the OP Action Strategy is intended to guide priorities and investments of both public and private sector stakeholders, implementing the action strategy will require the continued support from a wide range of partners, including district agencies, property owners, institutions, and community groups. Whereas Van Ness Main Street passed a unanimous resolution on December 13th that endorsed OP's action strategy and urged city agencies and officials to give great weight to this document in all projects along the Van Ness corridor. Now therefore be it resolved that ANC3F commends Ryan Hand, Tracy Gabriel, and the DC Office of Planning for an excellent action strategy that captures our shared vision for Van Ness. Be it further resolved that ANC3F urges OP's widespread dissemination of OP's action strategy among merchants, prospective merchants, residents, property owners, developers, institutions, city agencies, officials, and others, so that all are aware of the shared vision for Van Ness. Be it further resolved that ANC3F urges the Office of Planning, DDOT, DOE, WMATA, DCRA, BCA, and other city agencies to defer to this document in all matters relating to changes along the Van Ness Connecticut Avenue corridor, and that the document's emphasis on walkability, sustainability, economic vitality, and vibrancy be given great weight. Be it further resolved that Commissioners Ray and Tope are authorized to speak on behalf of ANC3F regarding this issue.
Second.
I want to thank the commission. I really appreciate all of your help. This has been fantastic working with you, and I'll be here down the road in the future. So
Thanks,
I'm not
Ryan.
going anywhere.
Let's vote on this.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ryan. When's the meeting, Ryan? The public meeting?
So that's a good question. We're working on that.
I thought I'd get you on that one.
And I'm hoping to go for the new UDC ballroom and show off some of the changes happening.
That'd be
That
great.
facility does not become available until January 25th, so we're working through some of the details and alternatives right now.
Okay, that's a good idea. Great.
We could also use the WAMU community room if you need.
We have the treasury report, right?
No, I'd like to add
Malachi's.
Okay.
something about that.
He didn't send us anything.
1 second. So November minutes, did we get minutes from it?
No.
No.
Okay.
So we have to do those in.
Next meeting, okay. Sally, you want to talk about something for here?
Yes, I sent around the donation for having us meet here all the time, plus secondary meetings. I hope everyone had a chance to read it. I propose that last time we gave them a donation of $500, and then it went towards the monitor, TV monitor. They've asked for tables or a podium. I kind of steered them to the tables, just because the podium, we don't use the podium a lot. I haven't seen it used that much. The tables are cumbersome and they're starting to fall apart. So if we do, they had their commercial interior designer come up with some suggestions. They're fine with what he suggested. 2 6-foot tables at $270, rounded off, would be $540. I did ask for an 8-foot table, but I don't have a price on it, so I can't give you that price, but I'm guessing it'd be like $350 or, $325. So we could do possibly the 2 6 and the 1 8-foot for roughly $900, or we could do 3 6-foot tables at $810. So the question is, do we want to go over the $500 mark that we usually have done in the past 2 years? But we have added quite a few meetings to the large conference room and to this room.
I've been using them
for the last year.
The soapstone, and I know the design committee's been
Yes,
here,
the
too.
design committee and Park Van Ness.
What do we put in the budget? Anything?
You have a budget here.
So they've asked for the 2 6-foot tables,
Yes.
and you just think an 8-foot table would be
Well, when we
a
have the
useful
7
addition.
of us, usually the 8 and then the 2 6 provide us.
No, we don't have a budget.
We didn't have a budget last year. Maybe it was under something else, like donation. I mean, I told Sandy Douglas that we could get back to her in January because I knew Maliki wasn't going to be here.
Yeah, so we don't have a budget item for it, but.
I think it was, but we definitely did it last year. I
No,
don't
we can
remember
do it,
where
we
you-
can't give a donation, but we can give a payment
We can
in
give a
lieu
payment.
of rent.
What they do is they give us a receipt they send us a receipt of what they paid for the items.
So
and then-
that got us in,
Did
we
that get us in
literally
trouble?
just give them a check payment in lieu of rent. That's what the auditor wants.
Okay.
They can do what they want with it.
Okay.
They can buy soda with it, I don't know, whatever.
Because that got us in trouble?
So, yeah, so we got in trouble buying equipment, and we got in trouble giving donations. So we have to give payment, we have to literally just give them a check and tell them it's effectively a rent check.
So we need to determine the amount then?
Yeah.
in order to
Yeah.
vote on that?
Yeah. It's not a donation, so we don't get any knowledge.
I propose $900 rent check. Let's make 100. We have less than 100 a meeting.
Okay, is there a second for 900?
Well, I was going to say, they've asked for 2 6-foot tables, right?
Well,
Which
they
would
want
come
to do
to-
a combination, but I came up with only 2 because that was right at the $540 mark, which we usually donated $500.
Wait, what did they ask for?
Well, they want like 8 tables, but.
Oh, okay. Okay. I mean,
they'll take whatever. They definitely, for us, we need 3 tables, an 8 and 2 6s, or 3 6s.
so this is an 8-foot?
No, this is a 6-foot.
This is 6, and that's?
2, 4. No, maybe this is 8. It's 8. Is that an 8 or a 6?
They're both.
They're 8s. Okay. So we could do 2 8s, but the 2 8s are still going to be roughly $900, or 3 6s, $900. Do we have a problem with?
Get some already.
What are we?
$900. I mean, we gave 500 the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
Seems like quite a jump, but I guess we've been using it more.
We have used it a lot. Let's say if we do.
I mean, that seems really expensive for a table. I know Costco has really nice tables.
No, we don't want Costco.
We don't want
Actually, we've
Costco
looked
tables?
at those and they're
Okay.
flimsy, so the answer is
I'm
no.
okay increasing it,
These
but
are
it doesn't look like a
commercial
high jump.
use, and they're
Say 750.
lighter.
Oh, okay.
That seems arbitrary too.
Well,
Yeah, because we've been given 500, but we definitely used it more than we have.
well, they'll
previous
take
year.
whatever. I mean, they're not asking. She did ask for at least 2 tables.
So I mean, like we can, I think 750, and I mean they could apply for a grant and get a lot more money
That's a good point.
to get 3 to $5,000.
So, yeah, I think instead of couching it in tables, if we couch, it makes sense in the increased usage over last year.
Right.
Would you say we've increased usage by about 50%?
Probably.
I would
say that's a safe assumption.
She told me there's at least 4 meetings a month that we're
And there used to be how many?
only 2. Oh, but last year I had quite a few.
Okay.
So in that case, we've increased it by 100%.
Yeah,
Frankly.
we've increased quite a lot.
I would be more comfortable doing a sort of a 50% increase and then encouraging them to apply for a grant for things that might help.
Fine. 750 is
All right,
good.
that's 750 is good.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to pay this Forest Hills DC. What?
You can't.
Just listening.
Okay.
A
He looks
motion-
very concerned.
A
You look
motion to
concerned.
pay Forest Hills of DC in lieu of rent, $750, because they don't charge us rent, and the auditor does not want us to donate or buy them stuff. It's your second.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So we'll tell Maliki that.
So
he's
what
not
do I-
super surprised.
So do we pay it before the end of the year, or we pay it in January?
I'll ask if Maliki can cut a check, we could do it before.
I mean, they're
January.
not saying we have to do it. I
No,
told
know.
her it could be
I'll ask
January.
when
because-
Maliki's back, he
Okay.
can write the check and
Okay.
we'll figure it out.
Because I think
Whenever
last
that
year
is.
we did January.
I don't think it matters. I mean.
I just
I
brought it
think
up so
it's
we can-
beneficial if they get it before this year, so it's in their fiscal year, but, let's see when's Maliki back? I have no
Next
idea.
week.
Next week, so maybe he could. Okay, I think that's it. What do you want?
I would like to revisit the Pepco Exelon merger that was brought up, and we did pass a resolution opposing it back in August.
Yeah.
That settlement was rejected by the PSC, and then the stakeholders came back to the table at the mayor's urging, and there's a revised settlement agreement. I'm not the expert on this. I don't have it prepared.
Andrea testified
On our behalf.
The new one.
Okay.
Yes.
On our behalf.
On our
She's
behalf.
Expressing our
Yeah.
3F's opposition.
I mean,
Okay.
she sent
That's
us,
fine.
And she sent us something.
she sent
but
us
she's been
her
authorized
testimony.
to do
Does
that.
it? Okay.
And she addressed a lot.
Do you think that's
with
fine?
Judy's
Do we
saying.
not need to do a resolution then?
I don't think
Okay.
so.
I'm
Okay.
not prepared to do one. I don't
Okay.
know enough about it.
That's fine.
I mean, we could ask Andrea, but.
You know what? I did not realize it was being heard before the end of the year.
Well, they changed, it was the 18th, and they changed it to the 23rd.
Okay. If she's expressed our thoughts through testimony, that's fine with me.
We all agreed that she did.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I remember passing a resolution saying she could testify.
I was not here
so.
for it, so I'm not-
Okay. Okay.
All right, so then our next meeting's the 19th of January. As a heads up, I will not be at that meeting, so we'll have to figure out something.
Our vice chair.
Yes, our vice chair.
You're gonna have to handle Sidwell, or we'll have to have a meeting or change the date or something. We'll have to figure something out.
Can we make sure DDOT's invited to that?
I think you need to be
We're
at
in
this
Western.
meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do that.
Okay.
Adam,
No, I would like to be,
When
but
will
I-
you
I-
be? I think we need to change the meeting,
That's
because
fine, I
there's
don't
too
care.
many things with Chick-fil-A.
Is
Said,
Chick-fil-A
well,
gotta be January?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it has to be January.
When do you get back?
The 11th, and I'm gone the 18th.
Can we do it the day before?
Wait a minute, when are you here or not here?
I'm back the 11th, and gone, well, 18th is a holiday.
Right.
Oh, yeah, that's.
So
what we're
I'm
thinking.
gone, so, whatever, this week.
The week of Martin Luther King.
Yes,
You're gone the whole week.
yes.
So we need to be before that because of the BZA hearing.
So the 12th.
I mean, unless you wanted to do the meeting on like the 25th.
Let's do the
day-
25th.
The day before the hearing. I
No, the
mean,
hearing's
BZA
the 28th.
Oh, is
No.
Yes.
Oh, you're right, you're
It's
right.
the 28th. I'm
Is that
sorry.
the Chick-fil-A hearing or the Sidwell
The
hearing?
Sidwell hearing is the 26th.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the Chick-fil-A hearing is the 28th.
But are they gonna go for a delay in that?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, if they do, we can change it, but or play it by ear. But
It just seems very close to those two hearings, so.
So BZA will be mad that we only give them comments an hour before, but I'm planning
Public space won't
to
care.
go to the BZA and actually testify, so then it'll be less annoying, slightly.
I think we should change it to.
What about the 12th?
So, yeah, I could do like
What
12,
if we did
13,
it-
14, 15.
Yeah.
Or.
I think the
25th.
12th is probably better than the 25th.
I don't think it's enough time for Chick-fil-A for getting some of our comments together. I can tell you
Sure.
that.
'Cause we want
That's
the ad
less than a
hoc
week.
Committee to give
With
us
the task
recommendations
force.
before that.
Do we have enough
I'd-
people that could show up on the 25th? Could all of us?
I can make either date work, but I think it's, in terms of submitting our comments, if we need to get them in earlier. Like that's a good point. The 12th, or how much will we generate before
We won't.
that?
I mean,
Well,
So then the
question's about the ad
25th,
hoc
is that
committee,
too
right?
close to?
it's close to Sidwell. It's not that
It's
close
fine,
to
because hopefully there'll be a
Chick-fil-A.
resolution. It just will be what it is.
Well, then that will be the third time we've talked about Sidwell, and they'll be working on stuff between now and then
Yeah.
amongst themselves.
No, the goal would be that we literally, ideally,
It's got a bow
supporting
on
it
it.
so that
Yeah.
BZA is not like, what the heck.
Okay. So the 25th?
I can do the 25th.
Can you do
I
the
can do the
25th?
Can everybody
I
here
can.
do it at least? So at least we have a.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's a
I
Monday.
might have another commitment, but it sounds like we have enough people in the
We have
event that
4.
it's
That's
not-
all we technically need.
Yeah, but
And
I'll
I'm
commit
sure
that.
one of the other 2 can likely be here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
You sure?
I mean,
We'll reach out.
with
We have 4. We have a quorum right now.
We're good.
With the 4 of us.
Yeah.
Okay. So then we should check with the home to see if
Oh,
they
can change
have
that. I'll check
space,
with
because
her.
sometimes the ward 3 Dems use it, but I don't think they will on that Monday.
When is I thought they were the third Monday.
It might, yeah, something like that.
It's
That would be the
before
18th.
us.
But that's a holiday, so.
Oh, that's true.
Whatever, we'll figure it out. Worst case, we'll have a meeting somewhere else.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
not the end of the world. We
Okay.
can have it in somewhere.
UDC.
UDC, yeah.
UDC, first meeting in UDC.
Yep.
Oh,
wait a minute. You just said the 25th.
I won't be able to do it then. I can promise you that I'm pretty much booked out.
No, but you just said you were.
Oh, yeah, the ballroom.
The ballroom is the 25th.
There you go. I can't do it then, so maybe you should.
That would be a special,
The inaugural.
a special inaugural event.
Oh, I thought you were saying that you
The
were.
next Onion article.
Oh, that's a good idea.
What?
It opened, the ballroom is
Oh, yeah, yeah.
January the
Okay,
25th.
so 25th.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
So we'll cancel the 19th. So I'll tell the current.
That's great, because then I can celebrate my husband's birthday on the
Even
19th.
Oh.
Win-win. All right, so I think that's everything tonight. So, any issues adjourning? Cool.
I'm just, who's on the Chick-fil-A task force?
I don't know. We'll
Well,
So moved.
I know.